All right. Thanks, everybody. Good morning. This is Rick Fernandez, your vice chair. I have the honor of chairing the meeting today since our chair, Mr. Roberts, is out of the area. So I'll try to do my best to move things along. I'll note at the outset, we do not have a quorum today. So as was the case last month, we do not have the ability to take any action on action items. The good news is I didn't have to really spruce up on my rules of order, Robert's rules of order, since we won't be doing much of anything other than listening and offering comment today. But please do, if you have comments, make sure you note them, because as what happened last month, I think Bill made an effort to get the sense of the committee, and his intent, at least, I wasn't at the meeting, was to communicate the sense of the committee to the board. We can certainly still do that. That said, it's 9:03. We kicked off. If I could ask whoever has got the log sheet to call the roll.
David Bailey. Carolyn Brown. White Prindle.
Carolyn Brown is here.
Much further, Gail.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Trying to unmute people individually.
I got Carolyn.
Carolyn Brown is here. She's in the conference room.
Thank you.
Everyone may unmute themselves. Hoyt is.
Okay, so I'll start back over at the top. David Bailey. I have Carolyn Brown already checked in. White Prindle. I do see Hoyt online. Christina Bosworth.
I'm here.
Diaza Morrison.
She's there.
I see her, thank you. Stephen Hollenkamp. Nicole Rice.
Present.
Alexis Boback.
Here.
Christina Costa.
Here.
Aya Yasin. Artie Fryer or Nancy Castellano. Bill Roberts. Nicholas Glover.
I'm here.
Don Skelton.
I'm here.
Jeff Lucas. Jonathan Knudsen.
I'm here.
Cliff Reese.
I'm here, but leaving early for a medical appointment.
Sharon Gamond. I know I saw her.
She's here. She was we were unable to get her in as a participant panelist.
Yeah, I see her. Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Terrence Trott. Rick Richmond.
Here. Can you?
Joshua Frank.
Here.
Okay, that completes roll call.
All right. Thank you very much. I guess our first order of business is public comment. Do we have anybody in the queue?
I don't see any hands being raised. So
All right,
I don't think
move
we
on.
have anybody waiting to make public comment.
All right, move on to members' interest. Anyone have anything they'd like to place on the agenda at future meetings? Do we know if anybody is even trying to talk? Are we still having a problem with communication?
Everyone has the ability to unmute themselves at this time.
Okay, now I'll ask again. Anyone have a member's interest item? All right, well, we're burning right through this, folks. Item 5 is approval of minutes. Again, since we do not have a quorum, we're not in a position to review and approve minutes. No motions can be heard or voted on. That said, if you've had an opportunity to review the minutes for September 1 and October 6, we're backed up now. September 1 and October 6, they're in your agenda packets. If you have any comments about changes, modifications, additions, go ahead and make the comment. At least we'll be able to note it. Anyone have anything? All right, I'll take that as a no. Item 6, action item. In this case, it's really a status report. Again, given no quorum. Tentative work program and comments. Justin Hall from the Department of Transportation. Do we have Justin available?
Yes, good morning, Rick. Can someone from the TPO staff give me the permission to share my screen?
Sure. Michael, can you make Justin Hall a presenter?
Yes, just
Thank
did.
you. All right, let's do this. Can you guys see the presentation, or do you see yourselves?
I'm just seeing myself right now.
Okay, good. All right, thank you. All right.
Justin, you have to, yeah, now we can see it.
Okay, perfect.
We
Thank
see
you.
it now.
I don't know which screen it is, screen 1 or screen 2. I apologize. Good morning, everyone. My name is Justin Hall with FDOT, and we're here to present our annual tentative 5-year work program. So many of you have been here, so you've seen the first couple slides, but if you haven't, I'll just run real quickly through, the process. So currently we're working under our adopted 5-year work program, which we're currently in fiscal year 22, which is our year 1, and fiscal year 26 is our year 5 and our currently adopted 5-year plan. So today we're here to present the new tentative work program, which will have a new first year of fiscal year 23 starting July 1. And that'll also bring in a new 5th year, which will then be fiscal year 27. So, and that's where we're at in the process is with the tentative. Once the governor signs the tentative work program and we hit July 1, that'll become the new adopted work program, with fiscal year 23 being our new first year and fiscal year 27 being our new 5th year. So as part of this process, it's kind of a step-by-step approach, but first what we try to do is deliver the unfunded phases of any projects if they're ready. We capture any cost estimate increases, which if anyone's watching the real estate market, you know that our cost estimates for right-of-way are going up. And then we add new projects as requested. So how do we add new projects? There's a lot of different things that we look at. So MPO, TPO priorities, regional priorities, and then CIS DOT priorities, and with a focus on safety and security, system preservation, multimodal enhancements, operational improvements, and capacity improvements. And so what you'll see here in this presentation is what's new. So either new funding, adjustments in funding, new projects, new phases. So, if you saw something last year and you don't see it this year, that means it's still moving along like it should. If you saw something last year and you don't see it, or you see it this year, then that means there was either a new phase or an adjustment to the funding. So just kind of to go through that real quick. All right, so the first slide just shows a few different projects, the MPO Transportation Planning Fund. So those are the annual funds that we add every year for now it's the TPO to complete their transportation planning activities. We added a corridor study on George Road from Dana Shores to Town and Country Greenway. So there was a study out there in the past, so just updating it, and we're trying to work with Hillsborough County to sponsor that project because it's off system. Fowler Avenue from 56 to I-75, We added a corridor study. I'm sure a lot of you remember that we're underway on a PD&E study for the western portion of Fowler Avenue. And so this is just to capture the corridor east of that PD&E study, so that when we go out and design and construct the modifications of Fowler Avenue, that we can capture all the way from 275 to 75. So this is actually, the first one's actually a big one. This has been a TPO priority for a while, and DOT's been trying to find funds. And so we were actually able to advance the right-of-way acquisition on Bush Boulevard from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 23. And that enabled us to add construction in fiscal year 27. And we're actually hoping that next cycle we'll be able to advance the construction as well if the right-of-way acquisition goes according to plan. And that is to, we're actually reducing lane widths on Bush Boulevard and then widening the sidewalks on both sides of the road. In fact, on the south side, there's quite a few sidewalk gaps. The next project, US 92 at McIntosh Road, we added PE in fiscal year 23, so that's intersection improvements on that US 92 at McIntosh. And then Adamo Drive in Rio, we added right away in construction on Adamo and then construction on Rio Street, which is part of the early works for West Shore. So here are a few resurfacing projects. So MLK Boulevard from Wheeler to Forbes, so that's in Plant City. US 301 from the Manatee County line to Sun City Center, so South 301, and then from Balm to Witt Road, with all those designed in 23 and construction in 25. And then a few more resurfacing projects. We got Fowler Avenue from Bruceby Downs to River Hills, Causeway from 301 to 50th, Kennedy from Hoover to Church, and then Adamo or 60 from west of 34th to east of 34th. Now these 3R projects are a little different. So there's 60 from Buckingham Palace to Lithia Pinecrest, so that's out in East County. Park Road from Baker Street to I-4, which is in Plant City, and then Dale Mabry Highway from Gandy to Sevilla, which is a southern Dale Mabry project. All of those have PE in 23, construction in 25, but they also include intersection improvement projects with them as it goes with. And then for rail, there's 2 railroad crossings that we're working on, one on 60 at Clarence Gordon Jr. Road and one on Kennedy Boulevard at Willow. So both of those are for rail safety. And then Tampa International Airport had an airside shuttle project that we've added construction in fiscal year 23, and then the HART bus replacements that we add every year. So the total funding over the next 5 years is $1.1 billion. You can see the breakdown. One question we get a lot is on the bike ped spending, which we haven't been able to figure out exactly how to dial in on how to show that. We have looked at, so our projects right now, we prepare a PPR whenever any new project is created. And that's really just the details on the project. So we're looking at adding a PPR identifier for any resurfacing capacity or complete streets project if they're building either a new sidewalk, closing sidewalk gaps, or building a trail to identify it. So hopefully next year we'll be able to come forward and say, maybe not exact dollar amount, but be able to say how many projects in our program are either widening a sidewalk, adding a sidewalk, or adding a trail. So we're trying to work inside our system to find a way to better demonstrate how much money we're spending on bike ped improvements. With that, we've got the online public hearing, which just wrapped up October 29th. We actually currently are in the public comment period. It ends on November 12th, and you can make those either directly to the district, you can make that to any DOT employee, or we have fdot.gov/work program public hearing district 7, which I'll send that to Rich if anyone needs that link directly. And so then the next couple steps will be the MPO would submit their objections November 22nd, and then the legislature will review and adopt, and then the governor would sign. With that, any questions?
Justin, thank you very much. I appreciate that. This is Rick Fernandez. I don't know that I'm going to actually be able to see everyone's face on my screen. For some reason, my gallery isn't operating right. But if you have questions, please just voice up. I'll recognize you, and we'll go ahead and place our questions to Justin. Any questions?
I have some questions, Mr. Chair. It's Christina Costa.
All right, Christine, you're first in the queue. I think I see Rick Richmond had his hand up too. You're second.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, Christine, why don't you tee it off?
Thank you. Justin, I want to start with a big thank you to FDOT for the effort you're expressing in the attempts to quantify how many projects and hopefully eventually how many dollars are being devoted to non-vehicular, active transportation, walking, biking, micromobility. Those projects are so important, and as an advocate, we've been asking for years, well, what do we have in the pot? And I think it's a good opportunity for FDOT to shine. And so, there's a lot more happening than people know about. And so I start my questions and comments with a big thank you for that effort, and keep it up, and let's get some numbers, because if we have no benchmark, we don't know where we're going. We don't know if we're getting any better. So thanks. I wanted to confirm the Bush Boulevard from Northdale Mabry to Nebraska includes where Chamberlain High School is. Is that correct?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay, and for the committee's reference, a student from Chamberlain High School was killed on Bush Boulevard as she crossed the street to get to school, and it was the catalyst for our Vision Zero programming. And so Chamberlain really needs that kind of help because you just have a real cluster there of roadway design, but also motorist behavior, and these are teenagers. So we know what that's going to end up in some tragedies and bad behavior. So I'm really glad that's on the list. And then my real question and my ask, I'm just going to say it, I am asking if it's possible to add a railroad crossing to the list of those that are going to be repaired. And this would be the railroad crossing at UT that intersects, it runs along Cass Street and intersects at North Boulevard. That is a critical route for bicyclists. And I have had not one, but 2 flat tires on 2 separate bikes because it's just like riding over. I mean, it's just so awful. I could send you some pictures if you want, but can you please see if we can add or repair? It's just really, really dangerous. If there had been a car around when I hit it the last time at night, I would really have been in harm's way. So and I'm not the only one there. It's very active. So I just put that on your list. Thank you very much.
Got it added.
Okay, Christine, thank you. Does that sum up your questions?
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Rick Richmond, you're next up in the queue.
Thank you, Rick. Good morning, and thank you for the presentation. I'm reading through the letter that Beth said, and my question falls in line with what BPAC had expressed was when roads are resurfaced, and I don't know, I don't need a detail of which one, but I'm curious, are any that are being resurfaced adding bike infrastructure as a restriping in the process? And also, I'll just verbatim for what they say, what is your analysis for feasibility to adding, incorporating bike infrastructure when you've selected or identified a road to be resurfaced?
So every one of our resurfacing projects, we complete a roadway safety audit. And as part of that, we look at every user, bike ped, transit, like you name it. And I can tell you that, I would say about 75 to 80% of our resurfacing projects, if they don't have a existing bike ped infrastructure, then we're looking to add the bike ped infrastructure. I know of several of the projects off the top of my head that were on that list that we're adding either bike lanes or they have an associated multimodal improvement project with them that's widening a sidewalk or adding a sidewalk or adding a trail. I know one of them's adding a trail. But that's all part of the roadway safety audit, and we complete those for every resurfacing project. Every single one gets an RSA done.
Got it. Nope. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And just, I mean, and for I guess, sake of transparency on 3Rs, the biggest challenge on a 3R is that generally they do not have a right-of-way phase associated with them. And so if the RSA identifies a bike ped improvement that needs right-of-way, then we have to program a separate project. And that's statewide. So, and that's why a lot of times you'll see like it goes with an intersection improvement, or it goes with a multimodal project, or it goes with an urban corridor improvement. And it's because it's not statute, but it's just a standard practice that DOT does not add right-of-way phases to resurfacings. But that's something we've talked about lately, because we do see a growing need for even just sidewalks, just closing sidewalk gaps with the resurfacing projects. And so that's something that we've been talking about lately on whether with the resurfacing projects, if the roadway safety audit identifies gaps in the sidewalk, should we go ahead and just program a right-of-way phase and try and get it done? And it's just a little bit of a different thought in how we do what we do, because resurfacing, so everything else is programmed out 5 years. So we come out and we say, hey, here's our 5-year program. We're looking at fiscal year 27. But if you look, anytime we, every year when we do the work program highlights and we come and we do this update, the resurfacing projects are always 2 years ahead of that. So this year, all the construction that we're adding for resurfacing is in 25. And that's because the resurfacing schedule or calendar based on pavement reviews is about a 3-year. They're about 3 years, not 5 years. And that's just due to pavement conditions and things of that nature. So we're trying to look at that and see how we can get a little further ahead and with those RSAs and be able to look at opportunities to acquire right away if we need them for sidewalk improvements. But that's a good question.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for that insight. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Rick, thank you. Anyone else? I think I see Josh Frank waving his hands at me, and Nikki Rice. So Josh, you're next in the queue.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't find my camera. So thank you, Justin, for that presentation. I've got sort of maybe one, secondary question to what Christine had mentioned. You talked about the PPR adding a new category, I think is what you called it, for how you begin to sort of categorize projects and what expenditures are. I think that's really an interesting dynamic that is something that FDOT should look at being a little bit more specific even than what you're showing on the screen. I think those codes are really too simplistic and perhaps don't give an accurate representation, even if you added a bike and ped infrastructure category. So for example, underneath transit, having the airports project underneath transit, I don't know if I would qualify that as transit. So maybe having subcategories, being a little bit more specific with how those are broken down, because I think what's important is, as Christine mentioned, obviously filling in sidewalk gaps are important, and in resurfacing, adding bike lanes are important, but some of those are required when you come in to bring things up to code, for example, and aren't, say, new spending for bike and ped infrastructure. So it's not necessarily an added trail. It's not necessarily a separated bike facility that's maybe off the curb. So those I would assume those would be perhaps a new category or something completely different. So I think having that level of nuance and specificity is something that would be really important, not just for FDOT, but for the board, and for us to see just where that allocation and spending is going, for example. So that's sort of my first thought on that. And then the second thought is, I think not just bike ped, but I'd like to see that broken down into lane reduction, lane expansion. So every sort of a little bit more nuanced view, so we can understand just where the priorities lie within that 5-year work program beyond the sort of broader topics. So that's all I've really got to say.
Justin, you have any comment on that?
No, I mean, I don't disagree with them. I mean, it's just really, for us, it's just very difficult in an antiquated system. But I mean, we're trying to find ways to better describe what's going on. And I mean, Josh and I have talked offline on another project. So I mean, I generally agree. I agree with what he's saying. I mean, we're trying to work on that, and if we can do a better job of breaking them down, we will.
Okay, thank you. Josh, you good? Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Josh, so move on to Nikki Rice. You're up.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm a little bit of a mess. I've still been recovering. This takes this picture just a little bit bigger than even where Josh was referring to it, Justin, because when we make reference to what we're spending dollar per dollar or what these projects look like, it's missing the larger picture of what's being done across the state, you know, and how these projects incorporate. I made a video that I wanted to share today. I had driven back from Orlando and had to take a back route due to an accident that I hadn't been on in years, that the new tollway goes through. And I got to see what was going on from the backside of Disney Springs, Kissimmee, across the state, right through the Green Swamp. So when we say that we're building, when we build something new or we create something new at FDOT, we put in that infrastructure versus trying to revamp infrastructure, you know, and those thing issues. What I saw was what I saw going across the middle of the state was basically just giant Bruce B. Down boulevards with no options for transportation, no options for bike ped, the same formats of problems that we have here, and infill after infill of development being fed by our dollars and FDOT creating expansions straight up to a toll road. So it's pretty concerning to me when we sit on a board and we see a presentation on like this so-called like 5-year work program, but this is just a piece of it. And so could you, if you were to try to explain the larger picture on how these connect, what would you tell people on this board who aren't familiar with other development in the state to look at as far as materials or information that would be a little bit more large picture? Like how would you, what would you tell somebody to make reference to working for FDOT?
So what we've tried to do this year, so this presentation, you know, is on District 7, and it used to be the districts were very fractured. We all presented this information differently. We presented different information. We actually historically, surprising or not, we've actually given more information than other districts. But so now the districts have actually adopted more of what we do. So as far as the big picture, the dot.gov/WPPH, so if you drop the District 7, so if you go to the website's on the screen, but I think it's still on the screen, I'm not sure, but and you drop the District 7, we've created a statewide map of all the projects, and you can choose by category, so capacity, you know, anything like that, and you can see the connections that are being created anywhere in the state, you know, new, old connections, and I mean, I think it's a good conversation to have. I'm not sure that project, Nikki, I'd have to go out there and drive out there. I'm not familiar with that project, but
I wasn't familiar with the expansion of how I knew that it was happening. You know what I mean? I knew that there was going to be a ton of infill. Seeing every inch of land just completely decimated. I know, by the way, if anybody's wondering where building materials or construction workers are, I know where they're at. So I found them. I couldn't make a left-hand turn on a country road. I had to wait for 30 semis with building materials coming through. And this is in the middle of the Green Swamp, the heart of the aquifer. So, you know, these roads, everything's brand new, everything's filled up, and some of them are FDOT roads, you know what I mean? And so what I'm seeing is there's been no accommodation for alternative modes of transportation, and just tens and tens and tens of, I would highly suggest that anybody who wants to see what we're allowing to happen in Florida, if you care about Florida, to take that back route from 301 all the way back up to Disney, just to see that when we allow this kind of unchecked development on roads and we kind of green light some of these projects, what it means. And I was stunned, Justin. It was, I knew we had the new, we were trying to fight that toll, but I had no idea how quickly it's gonna bleed all the way to here. There will be nothing left. And there's no infrastructure that's proper. So if somebody were to want to look at the bigger picture for Florida, if they went on the website, because how it used to make everything in like, even with like one project, I'll have like 20 slides, like section 1, section 2. Is there actually, and are you guys committed to making a map of how all this development, like how the state looks by category? Is that actually on there now on the site?
It is. It's a fully interactive GIS map. You can search, I mean, by work type, by category type. You can search by congressional district, by House or Senate district. I mean, you can. It's fully interactive, and that's it. If you go to the District 7 site, you can see the same thing, but just for District 7. If you drop District 7, then you can get the whole state.
Okay.
And if you have any questions or if it doesn't work, let me email me, call me. I mean, because hopefully it should be up and running. Last time we did I'm looking back at one of my people. Last time we did a demo, it was up and running, so it should be operational.
It's just making it as user friendly as possible to somebody who's a citizen, because some of these maps can be confusing or not knowing the right terminology. But yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share that because.
Yeah, we were the first to adopt the Google API, so ours looked like a Google map, because we said that's what everybody was familiar with. Everybody was familiar with that style, and so they statewide have adopted the same. It's a GIS map with the Google API, so it's as user friendly as anything I've seen us create. So if there's any issues, please let me know, or if we can make it better, please let us know.
Okay, Nikki, thank you. I think I saw Christine's hand pop up. Christine, you have another question?
Thank you. Yes. A comment for Nikki. A few years ago, I saw a presentation by an organization called the Florida Chamber of Commerce. They presented a vision plan whereby there would be highway access all the way across Florida, because their vision is that we have these enormous highways that enable our ports to feed the entire nation with goods. So that you just go and look at their website and see if you can find that vision. I was shocked, and I realized that's putting in a lot of effort to make these things happen. So the Florida Chamber of Commerce. For Justin, another follow-up question. You mentioned the road safety audits and the repaving. What resources do people have to look at the queue?
The only one that can't.
Sorry? The road safety audits and just the repaving projects. Where does a person go to see what's in the queue for those projects? Because we have tons of missed opportunities. If there's not a lot of public engagement. I'm thinking specifically about Howard Avenue down here, a major entertainment district, and recently repaved, smooth as could be, cars accelerating fast, and a lot of people walking around and enjoying the entertainment district. So how does a person plug in to those?
So there's a couple different ways. So if you look at the work program on a whole, and if you look at the resurfacing projects and you see the ones that are under design, those are the next resurfacing projects that would come up for construction. Ahead of that, so the priority list ahead of that, I'm not sure. I'd have to find out if we have that on a forward-facing site. I don't know. That's handled out of our maintenance group. And I know the driving factor for that priority list. Oh, go ahead, Rich. Sorry.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, Justin, but I would mention to Christine and all of the members of the committee that the TPO has an interactive project viewer map under the TIP page on our website. And one of the categories that is identified there is resurfacing projects. And that's not just for DOT, but That's basically any project that's in the DOT work program, as well as the capital improvement programs from the city and cities and the county. So that's always available as a resource. It's updated every year around October 1st, which is the start of the new federal fiscal year. So it is pretty current, and you can take a look at that and click around, and it's multicolored lines, so you have to sort of click on each one to see what project information pops up. But if you look at the legend, it's broken down by things like bike ped, resurfacing, major capacity projects, etc.
Does that include city and county? Everything in the
Yes,
all
everything
municipality projects? Okay.
Everything that's part of their capital improvement program that is identifiable by location.
Is every maintenance project in the capital improvement program?
Well, now you're asking detailed questions.
We can follow up later if you want. Yeah. Okay.
So sometimes they have categories of projects. I'm just, off the top of my head, guardrail projects. I don't think they identify those map wise, but most major repair and improvement projects are identified by location.
Okay, I think Vishaka has something to say.
Okay. Christine, do you have any other question?
No, thank you.
Okay, hold on a second. Just one comment, tech comment. While Christine was speaking, I lost her audio for, I don't know, 30 seconds or so early on in her comments. Did anybody else have that problem? Y'all were able to hear her? Okay, it may be at my end. I'm going to turn off my camera. Maybe I'm having a little bit of a technical over issue. So I'll be here. You're just not going to see my lovely face. All right. All right. The webcam's off, I think. Yeah. Okay. Everybody still hear me all right, I hope.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Vishaka, you had your hands up. So what staff got to say?
Oh, no, sorry. I just wanted to add to Rich's comments about the tip tool. What we do is we just take the projects that have been reported in the CIP from the jurisdiction. So we do not add any additional information. It just it's just a representation of what they have reported in their CIP. So to answer Christina's question about the details, it would be just what they have in their CIP. But if there's any project that you would be interested to know additional details, or the one which comes next to a FDOT project, if you are interested in anything particular along a corridor, I can get you additional details.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the committee have questions for Justin? I'm not seeing any hands. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Anybody voicing up?
Mr. Vice Chairman, Vishaka would like to talk a little bit about the draft letter that is part of it. And go ahead, Vishaka.
Right. Hold on. Before we go there, because I have a couple of questions for Justin. And I'm aware we have an action item on the letter, so I definitely am going to get there for Vishaka. Justin, it's Rick Fernandez again, even if you can't see me. I went to the DOT's online public hearing. The staff was kind enough to give us a hot link to that in our agenda packet. And so I've got a couple of questions related to that. And you mentioned this earlier. As I understand it, the public comment period is still open until November 12th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And have you in fact received any public comment through that website portal?
I'd have to go back and look. I know that the last comment report I had, there were some comments, but I'm not sure if those were from in-person comments or from the website, but we have received comments.
Okay, and what would it take for us to get access to the comments that are being left for you by the public? Not just us, but the TPO.
I mean, I think just a simple request. I mean, that's public information. So I don't know if you want to wait until at the end of the public comment period for us to send you a report of the comments, or.
Well, it strikes me that we're being asked to review and in the perfect world, actually make a motion and approve a transmittal letter in the middle of a public comment period. And since the comment period is not yet closed and we're supposedly here representing the public on some level, it might be nice to know what the public has had to say. So maybe that presentation should have been part of what we're hearing today, at least as part of the agenda packet, so we would know what the public has had to say. I doubt you've had reams and reams worth of paper worth of comment, but the 15, 20, or 30 or so, I frankly would have liked to have seen them, and maybe the TPO would as well. Also, I understand that there was an open house on October the 28th at District 7.
Yes.
Did that, in fact, that did take place?
Yes, it did.
All right, and were you there?
I was, yeah, me and my staff, we were all there, yeah.
All right, what kind of attendance did you get for that?
I think we had 3 people come in person.
All right.
And all 3 were consultants that were marketing the DOT, trying to see what projects we had coming up.
Okay, well, thanks for that footnote. So it's fair to say we didn't get any public comment out of the open house. Is that fair?
That's fair to say.
Okay, well, fair enough. All right. Well, I would make a request to staff that somehow we manage to curate the public comment that has been logged so far and continue to do so through the end of the public comment period. That hopefully could be presented, at least whatever there is to be presented, by the time the TPO board meets, even though public comment will still not be over even then. I would like to see that. Let's see. All right, that takes us to the proposed letter of transmittal. I have just a couple of questions on that. Justin, I'm not sure, is this outside of your purview, or did you review that transmittal letter?
I haven't seen.
It's not been submitted to us.
Yeah, we have, DOT hasn't received it, so it's in TPO's staff's hands.
It's a draft letter at this point.
Understood. There's on page 2, and I know this is unfair if you don't have it in front of you. It was part of the agenda packet. You may not have seen that either. But on page 2 of the proposed letter that I think was drafted, well, I know it was drafted by staff. The signature line is Beth Alden. There's a line here that says the TPO board would like the department to consider funding of noise walls and avoid the gap that is currently existing near Robles Park. Do you have any comment on that concern or about the sound wall issue at or around Robles Park?
I mean, we're working with TPO staff. We had a meeting the other day looking at what options we have at Robles Park. We've been coordinating with Federal Highway on what we can and can't do based on the approved environmental document that we have. So, I mean, I don't really have a comment, but other than we're working on it.
So as we sit here now, there's absolutely no commitment from the DOT to establish a sound wall along the Robles Park area?
There's no commitment from the DOT at this time. Only really more for the fact that through federal guidelines, a noise wall there is not warranted based on the environmental document that was completed. So we're kind of stepping out of the normal process and trying to coordinate with our federal partners to see what is possible. So I would say there's no commitment right now because we don't even know what we can do.
All right. Well, as a resident of Tampa Heights, and that area is Tampa Heights, and being pretty familiar about what VM Ybor and historic Ybor and Seminole Heights are particularly concerned about, I can tell you sound walls are a exceptionally important issue to us. And I was frankly very surprised that there was nothing in the work document that we saw, and surprised to see this comment about the TPO board. So please go back and emphasize the importance of that. I have no idea what the environmental impact statement said about that, but I can assure you a sound wall in that area is critical, especially if we're adding capacity, which we are. Okay, that's, I think, all I have by way of questions. Now, I think staff had comments on the letter, so I'll pass it to Vashika.
And just before I sign off, I just want you guys to know we do appreciate the comments. I know that you don't have quorum, and I know that last meeting you didn't have quorum, and we took a lot of the comments. In fact, I know Christine went out and had a ride along with some of our staff, and we had a meeting with Josh Frank with city staff on the 14th Street typical section, which was from a comment that he had in the CAC. So DOT definitely still appreciates the comments, and will continue to participate whether there's quorum or not. So with that, I'll turn my camera off and I'll be quiet. So thank you.
All right, Vashaka, you have comment on your proposed letter?
Yes, Vice Chair, thank you. I just wanted to let you know that the purpose of this letter, I think we've mentioned about this during the comments, that this letter serves as a letter that the TPO board will be submitting to the FDOT after the board hearing, which is on November 14th. So until then, we are in a period where we are collecting comments taken from the committee feedback, and that's all we are going to include in the letter. So that is why it is still unsigned at this time, and we will be adding or making any edits to it until we transmit it to the FDOT. So that is the purpose of this letter, and most of the projects which we have highlighted at today's CAC meeting have already been included in the comments. If there is anything additional, you can email us, Rich or Beth, and then we can add it to the letter of comments that we'll be transmitting. So that is one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this letter. The second thing I wanted to highlight is you have in your agenda packet the Turnpike projects, which are also part of the tentative work program. So please take a look at it, and if there is any comments, we have with us staff from DOT who could address that as well. So just wanted to let you know that these two are things that you need to note today. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Okay. We have been asked by way of recommended action to approve the transmittal letter. And of course, we're not in a position to do that because of the lack of quorum. But if anyone has any comments to make regarding that transmittal letter, I certainly would be happy to entertain those comments as part of the record now. I'm not seeing any hands waving, and I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Anyone have anything to say? Okay. Well, I do. No one else does. Yes, Christine.
If I may, I just want to chime in and echo your concern that we're not really in a position to state, that we're in the middle of that public comment period, and we don't know what other members of the public are feeling and thinking about this yet. So I just share that concern that it's maybe it's premature. We just don't know how to reflect that information. I would also say that regarding the open house at FDOT 7 headquarters, I normally get a lot of invitations to those kinds of events. I can't make them all, but I don't remember seeing anything. I could have missed it. Everybody's got a full inbox bursting, but I was surprised to hear that it happened. I didn't know about it. So, and I usually do. Thanks.
Well, apparently you weren't alone. So it is what it is.
Yes.
All right. That said, I do have some comments on the letter, but before I take off on my little fun and frolic, anybody have any comment? All right. I'll come back to it after I'm done, in case anything I say prompts a comment at all. First of all, I do want to note it for the record, and for whomever it is that makes the presentation to TPO board, I at least would not have voted to approve this transmittal letter if it were put to me as a motion before this committee. And there are a couple of principal reasons for that. One is the timing with regards to the public comment, which hopefully I was able to explore in my questions to Justin. I think it's premature at this juncture to be doing a transmittal letter to the DOT before public comment is even closed. Number two, in reviewing the letter, I could not disagree more. I don't know who drafted this. I understand there are a lot of politics involved, and everybody's making a good faith effort, but I could not disagree more with paragraph 2 of page 1 of this letter that says, we are excited to, let's see, let me just read the whole thing in case you don't have the letter in front of you. We are excited about the governor's recent announcement to reinstate funding for the reconstruction of the West Shore and downtown interchanges, and we offer our full support for these projects. These vital projects have been the region's top priority, and the improvements will help alleviate traffic and provide safety to the users. First of all, I would note, and that's a quote, first of all, I would note this committee in various times during various fiscal years has voted to strike various sections of Tampa Bay Next. In particular, with regards to the downtown interchange, sections 5, section 6, section 7 have all been the subject of rather heated debate and votes. And we've made recommendations to the board in the past to strike sections of the Tampa Bay Next TBX project. So I don't think it would be at all fair to say that at least the CAC has historically expressed full unabashed support for these projects, either in whole or in part. On the paragraph bullet point 2 on page 2 that I referenced earlier with Justin about the sign walls or sound walls, the language here, to my estimation, is extremely weak. The TPO board would like the department to consider funding of noise walls. I can't emphasize enough over a period of 5 years how many times during community charrettes and civic association meetings and various other even DOT sponsored meetings, sound walls have been a principal area of concern, comment, question and answer. And it is clear that the people in Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, and Ybor want, if in fact this project is going to continue at all, want protection from the noise and the pollution that this project is going to create, whether it be in Seminole Heights, Tampa Heights, VM Ybor, downtown, historic Ybor. And in particular along Robles Park, it just baffles me that the idea of having no sound wall about Robles Park is just sort of fallen through the cracks in all of these discussions. So if we're going to mention anything about sound walls at all coming out of the TPO, it ought to be more about we don't want you to consider something, we want you to do it. This is community impact, and the community's wishes on this have been heard frequently over a period of over 5 years. So the letter, to my mind, is poorly timed and poorly drafted, and does not in fact communicate the essence of what this committee has done and community members have expressed over a period of 5 years. And I'll shut up. Anybody have any comment on the letter?
I think I see a hand. Hang on a second. Anybody who raised their hand, I think you're unmuted. You can certainly speak.
And I'm not seeing any hands. And I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Mr. Vice Chairman, Nikki Rice has her hand up.
Oh, Nikki. Okay. Thank you. Nikki, you're hidden behind something on my screen. I apologize. Go ahead.
Sorry, for some reason I have trouble with this application when I run it as well. I cannot agree more with you. When I read this, there are so many things in here. None of these are things that have been stated by our committee. This is a letter that expresses what the actual TPO itself, what their interests are. I know that Beth as director has to express certain things, but I don't see this being a reflection of our board in any way, shape, or form, particularly with regard to the interchange, which consistently the FDOT has not come to the table with any kind of fix to remove the bottleneck. There was a lot of questions that we had when we were shown the Fowler feasibility study about walkability and safety, particularly with the way the curvatures were done. We had quite a few concerns regarding that. And I would not vote for this. At all. I don't see this being in any way, shape, or form something that would have been asked for by this committee. So that is my personal opinion in regards to it. If it's the opinion of the TPO staff, that's fine, but it does not reflect the views or the concerns of the CAC. That's all.
All right, Nikki, thank you. Any other comments? Remembering we have no motion and we can take no action. We're a little more than a focus group at this point, but if you have something to say, go ahead.
Mr. Vice Chairman, I just want to level set. So this letter is on behalf of the TPO board, correct? Not the underlying committees like the Citizens Advisory Committee. Is that right?
As I understand it, yes, that's the intent.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
All right, if there aren't any other comments, yes, Christine.
Mr. Chair, in reviewing the letter, I got to the word that you already repeated that says excited, and I kind of just stopped and choked on that. So it's just the wrong tone, I think, in addition to the details that you cited to which you are opposed to the way that it reads. It does not accurately reflect the CAC, but to Mr. Glover's point, the letter's not specifically from CAC. So maybe we draft our own letter, or I don't know. We're asked to sort of just move this along and say we're cool with it, or tell us more about the process, or what the, Rich, maybe what we're supposed to be doing with this, approving it as is, or what?
So if I may chime in, since Christine asked, this letter was drafted by staff and reflects comments that have been made previously by other committees, as well as comments made by the TPO board itself. So it's not finalized. You certainly have the ability to weigh in. That's why we brought it to you. I would note that Hoyt has had his hand up for a few minutes, so maybe we ought to hear from him.
Hoyt, this is Rick. I'm sorry I did not see you, so please, voice up.
Hoyt, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what's going on. I seem to have some technical difficulties on mine today. Rich, I'll follow up with you about that, because I don't seem to have a chat where the ability to turn on my camera. But I just wanted to echo a little bit Rick's comments and say that it's a troubling trend to me that on each one of these projects there seems to be this preconceived, everyone is excited for it. No one objects to it, and the voices of concern seem to get little presentation in these things. And I understand, obviously, the department's not going to come out and say, oh, here's our project that everyone hates it, but we're still doing it anyway. But I do think that there needs to be a little bit more holistic and accurate representation sometimes of what these projects are, because and obviously I'm not going to debate whether it should go through or not. We've had that debate, but the community in Seminole Heights and the community of Eatwater for too long said to make sure their voices are heard and not forgotten, because I doubt this will be the last project that we're discussing in these communities. Thank you.
Shaka, I think your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, committee, for your comments. We would like to tell you that this is still in a draft stage. So I have taken a note of your comments, and I will address them, and we will redo the letter and send it to the committees. We will appreciate the comments, and since we do not have a quorum today, I think we would still not be approving the letter today, right? So does that give us more time to revise the letter based on the comments today?
Well, this is Rick. I would think you have more time to redraft the letter. If you're going to redraft the letter, I would hope that it could be forwarded to us so that we at least have an opportunity to review the new draft. I mean, personally, probably as an individual citizen, the only thing I'm going to be able to do is show up for public comment at the TPO board meeting and maybe submit something in writing to express my objection. And hopefully some members of the committee will do the same if they have concerns. But I would certainly like to see the earliest possible draft of whatever it is that's going to be presented to the TPO board for action, because I understand that's next week that they're going to be reviewing this, correct?
November 14th. Yeah, so next week the agenda will be posted.
Okay.
I can see Rich nodding, so I will take Rich's help and advice. Rich, please go ahead.
So back to one of your earlier points, Rick. Justin, do you think you could provide comments that have been received by the department to us so that we can circulate them to the committee?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could send that over today. I mean, just as of today, what we've received.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions regarding the action item?
Yeah,
I see Josh Frank's hand.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I just wanted to fully echo what has been said by both you, Nikki, and Hoyt, to throw my name on that list as well. I think this is a totally inaccurate representation of a lot of committees, and certainly that I have the pleasure of sitting on, but also a lot of neighborhood associations and other community groups that maybe don't have a voice in the writing of this letter. So I think to describe, the level of enthusiasm as it's written in this letter is an entirely way too rosy depiction of what has been and will probably remain to be very, very highly controversial projects, specifically the downtown interchange and the West Shore interchange. So in fact, it's not even probably just citizens committees that have voiced concern and objections to even striking items from the tip. We've even had some motions and debate in the TPO board itself. So again, I just would, Vishaka, I appreciate that you're going to take another look and that this is a draft, but I think it's far from being an accurate representation. So thank you.
Justin, I see your hand up. Justin Hall.
Hey, yes, so I just actually called one of our staff members, and so we have not received any comments from the public outside of the few that we received from consultants. And I guess that was consistent. Last year, we didn't receive any public comments, and the year before we received one. So I guess that's pretty consistent.
Are you talking about public comments submitted through your portal?
Yes, through the work program public hearing website.
So between Monday, October 25, and whenever it is that it closed, I guess October the 28th, you effectively got nothing from the public.
That is correct.
And
Other than, you got the public comment period that was open until November 12th. So we still could receive comments. I mean, we have 9 more days of public comment.
okay. Well,
Mr.
as a
Vice Chairman,
business,
if I may, this is Josh Frank.
who's that? Josh? Yes, please.
Yeah. Justin, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on you, but doesn't that seem like a problem? 3 years and 1 comment, 2 years with no comments. I mean, you wouldn't take a step back and decide to maybe change your process or procedure on how you get public feedback? That's kind of embarrassing, to be honest.
Yeah, we received significant public input throughout the year. And I think that we've reevaluated. I mean, this year, I guess the past 3 years, we've added the online component. They now have a social media component. We have the in-person meetings at the districts. We have an in-person meetings in Tallahassee. We get users. I mean, people come on the site, people click around, so it's not that we're not getting engagement. We don't get any comments. But Josh, I think it's something we're constantly looking at. Like I said, this year was the first year statewide that we had the GIS map, the interactive map. So, we're trying to find ways to better communicate the information. And, and like I said, this year we've been using social media advertisements. And, we post the invitation in the board and committee agendas. In fact, I think it's been in the board and committee agendas for 2 agendas now. We send out postcard mailers to the elected officials. We buy newspaper advertisements. We do the FAR ad. I mean, we notice it. I mean, I don't, not saying that we can't improve, but we try to improve every year. And this year the improvements were, adding the statewide connection and adding the GIS map statewide and the social media ads. So we, I'm not saying it's perfect, but we're trying to every year add another component to see if we can generate comments. But I think a lot of folks internally feel that we get comments as the projects come up. We get comments regularly on our D7 study site and our FDOT Tampa Bay site on the projects. And the only thing that we've kind of concluded in past years is that maybe the public prefers to interact on an individual project basis than commenting on the work program as a whole. But no, we do continue to try and drive, traffic, and I can get the user count. I can put a request in for how many users we've had so far on the website, both at the district and statewide level. That's something I can get together pretty quickly.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the effort. I understand, trying to engage the public is very challenging, but I think that, at what point do you say that this is unacceptable? We're getting 0. So something's not working, and you're getting feedback in other venues with other methods. And, whether it's project by project, I think I would challenge you to say that this is now a time to maybe step back and maybe totally rethink how this is done, because, I would understand getting 10 or 12, but 0, is unacceptable for an entire 5-year, $1.1 billion work program. So I don't know what the answer is, and it seems like maybe you guys don't either, and that's fine. It's challenging. So, but we got to figure this out, because that's embarrassing. Is the only word I can think of. So.
And I will say 3 years ago, when TV Next, I guess pre-TV Next, so when TVX conversation, we would receive hundreds of comments. So that it definitely used to receive more. We used to receive more feedback, on the work program public hearing. But yeah, Josh, we'll keep looking at it. And I'll talk with our central office counterparts and see if we need to just tear it down and start all over. And like I said, this year adding the interactive maps and adding the social media advertisements, that's what we were trying to do. And I'll tell you one thing, and I need to ask our Tallahassee counterparts to see. This is also the first year that it's hosted by Tallahassee. So it's hosted by a central site, and then we are just a spoke off of that wheel. In the past, we had our own website. D7WPPH.com was our old site, which was what we used to use. And so I got to check with Tallahassee to see if they're getting any comments on the general page on our work program. So I do need to ask that. I haven't had a chance to ask that yet. So that may show some insight too, if the comments are going to the general page instead of to our spoke site. So I'll have to look into that, and then I'll give a report back to Rich. I'll ask about unique users and things like that, and I can come back and give some numbers.
Okay.
All right. I just spin off of that for just a minute, Justin. And believe me, I appreciate that. You know, you can try all you want. It's hard to get sometimes the horse to drink, no matter how hard you drag them to the trough. And I understand. And even during the height of the TBX debates 5 years plus ago, when hundreds of people would show up for public hearings, it was predicted at that time by no less than the esteemed Johnny Wong that over time the level of engagement would decrease. Call it fatigue, call it people getting depressed and just giving up, call it, hey, you know, COVID. People have other things they're worried about. But the issues are no less important, and I think the people that are concerned are still out there. They're just, you know, speaking for myself, at some point you just kind of throw up your hands and say, nobody's listening. So, but I'm still here, and I know a lot of people are still interested. We just maybe got to drag a little harder, work a little harder, and be a little more creative about how we reach out, because I have no doubt that the fact that DOT has a website, something they're calling an online public hearing, is great for PR purposes, and it's a nice talking point when someone is making a presentation to the city council or the county commission or the TPO. But you don't generally comment after that, well, we have it, but nobody's showing up. So we don't have any comments to offer you, no data points that you can rely on in making your decisions. We wouldn't know this now if a question hadn't been asked about it. So if we're going to present it, you know, as something that exists, let's present it holistically so people understand if it's being effective or not in communicating with the public, so folks will know whether or not to rely on it. Because at the end of the day, that's all we've got. We need poll stars in order to make our decisions, and this doesn't offer any kind of poll star. All right, we're running short on time as far as this agenda item. I see one other hand. Nikki, could you make it short? Nikki Rice?
Yeah. I just was curious.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I was just curious because that's actually, and something we can circle back around to so we can move on since we can't get much done today. Because, you know, the state's mandating that we physically have so many people there. So how on earth did the District 7 how did the website get put in the hands of the state? I mean, the state couldn't even handle their own site for, you know, unemployment. So I'm just curious, like, how on earth did that happen? And it seems to me like a way to keep people from being engaged, because District 7's been a constant thorn with engagement. So it's just something I'm a little curious about that maybe we could find out, because there was a huge amount of engagement here. And then they created a whole marketing division to make us stop being engaged. So I guess the solution was moving that to Tallahassee for your own comment site to be monitored, or through their server. I'm just a little confused by that.
No, so, and I'll keep it short, but the decision for it to be moved centralized was Tallahassee did not like that each of the districts was presenting the information in different ways. And so to standardize the communication, they wanted to pull it back to a standard site. In fact, they gave us the template. We had to design our site within their template. So our site used to look a little different. You'd go on, there was a video message by the secretary, and then we had the kind of the who, what, when, where on the links. You know, you could kind of click along on the links. And so Tallahassee made that decision this year, actually.
The legislature or the governor or
no, like, just central FDOT central office.
FDOT office. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I think we've probably beaten this horse to death at this point, so we're ready to move on. Justin, thank you so much. Appreciate your report. We're on to line item 7, status reports, and we are 15 minutes ahead of our scheduled agenda item, so we're doing good. Let's keep the good times rolling. I-75 PD&E studies, Ashley Hensel, DOT.
Hi, good morning. Can you guys make me a presenter so that I can share my screen? Thank you. All right, give me just a second. Can you all see my screen?
Yes. Well, no, not now.
Oops. You cannot see my screen?
Not at the moment.
Let me try again, sorry. Now you can?
There it is.
You can see your faces.
See it.
Can you see my slideshow?
Yes.
Yay, okay. Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Hensel. I'm the DOT project manager for these 2 I-75 PD&E studies that we have going on I-75. With me in the room today, I also have Kirk Bogan, our district environmental management engineer, and on the line I have Jeff Novotny and Steve Gordillo, who are consultant project managers for these 2 studies. Today we're going to talk about 2 PD&E studies that are being completed concurrently for I-75. Shown in purple is WPI segment number 419235-2, which is I-75 from Moccasin Wallow Road in Manatee County to south of US 301 in Hillsborough County. And shown in green is WPI segment number 419235-3, I-75 from south of US 301 to north of Bruceby Downs in Hillsborough. The environmental documents being prepared for these studies are both type 2 categorical exclusions. The purpose for this project is to provide additional capacity and improve safety to better meet the future transportation demand in these rapidly developing areas of Manatee and Hillsborough counties. The improvements are expected to enhance I-75's overall regional functionality and improve the interstate's operating conditions within the project limits. We'll begin with the southern study from Moccasin Wallow Road to south of US 301. WPI segment number 419235-2 is the southernmost study, and it's a distance of approximately 24 miles. I don't know why this keeps advancing. The project will widen I-75 to provide 2 express lanes in each direction in the median of I-75. Mainline roadway improvements will take place entirely within the existing I-75 right-of-way. However, right-of-way will be required for some stormwater management facilities and floodplain compensation sites. Currently, I-75 is a 6-lane facility from Moccasin Wallow Road to Gibsonton Drive. The corridor in this section typically contains 3 general use lanes with 10 to 12-foot shoulders on both the inside and the outside in each direction. An 88-foot grassed median separates the 2 directions of travel. From Gibsonton Drive to south of US 301, the roadway is a 6-lane facility with 3 general use lanes, but includes 1 12-foot auxiliary lane in each direction. The preferred build typical section for this project includes adding 2 12-foot buffer separated express lanes in each direction with 12-foot outside shoulders and 12 to 15-foot inside shoulders. There are 3 interchanges within the study limits. Improvements at Big Bend Road interchange are being addressed under a separate design build project in coordination with Hillsborough County. Improvements at Gibsonton Drive are also being completed under a separate DOT project. And at State Road 674, improvements will be provided to accommodate the interstate widening. Now we'll move to the northern segment. The northern segment is WPI number 419235-3 from US 301, from south of US 301 to north of Bruce B. Downs Boulevard. Like the southern segment, this project will widen I-75 to the median and provide two 12-foot express lanes in each direction. These improvements will also take place predominantly within the existing right-of-way. However, right-of-way will be required for some stormwater management facilities, floodplain compensation sites, and near interchanges for ramp improvements. Currently, I-75 from south of US 301 to State Road 60 contains 3 general use lanes in each direction. This section also contains a CD system with 2 12-foot travel lanes in each direction, with 6-foot inside shoulders and 8-foot outside shoulders. From State Road 60 to north of Bruce B. Downs contains 3 general use lanes in each direction, with 10-foot inside and outside shoulders and an 88-foot grassed median. Sorry, my thing just keeps advancing on its own, so I apologize for the back and forth. The preferred build typical section is consistent with the southern segment, adding 2 12-foot buffer separated express lanes in each direction with 12-foot outside shoulders and 12-foot to 15-foot inside shoulders. The interchange at I-75 and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard is being completed under a separate FDOT project. All other ramp interchanges and associated with this project will be provided to accommodate interstate widening. We are currently evaluating the environmental effects associated with these improvements. The environmental analysis looks at several factors such as historic resources, wetland and endangered species and their habitats, land use, community impact, and noise impacts, among other issues. In summary, this project will add 2 express lanes in each direction from I-75, along I-75 from Moccasin Wallow Road in Manatee County to north of Bruce B. Downs in Hillsborough County, include noise barriers where feasible, make improvements to all interchange within the project limits, and acquire right-of-way for some mainline and ramp improvements, pond sites, and floodplain compensation sites. The preliminary costs associated with these projects is shown in the slide. Both projects are shown in the Hillsborough Long-Range Transportation Cost Feasible Plan. This is kind of our project schedule. This project has been around for a little while and then was put on hold. We're holding a public hearing, however, it's being shifted to the end of January 2022 due to scheduling issues. We still anticipate approval by the spring of 2022. So again, our public hearing will be moved to the end of January 2022, but we'll still hold it at the same location as planned. It will be held both in person with an option to attend virtually from 5:30 to 7:30 with a formal portion at 6:30. The in-person hearing location will be the Hilton Garden Inn off of US 301, and virtual attendees must pre-register on the website ahead of time. Our project documents will be available online as well as in multiple libraries and at the DOT prior to the meeting. And this is my contact information as a project manager if you have any questions before then, and I will also take them today if you have any questions.
I see Christina has her hand up.
Sorry, I had muted myself. Ashley, thank you for that comment. Christina Bosworth, your hand was up.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ashley. I have a question about this, specifically the southern portion. I drive that often, as I did today. What makes those express lanes? I'm kind of confused by the express lanes. Does it mean there's limited access? Because right now there's, in that 24-mile stretch, there's only three exits anyway. So is it considered express because those would be limited, or is there a plan for a toll to consider it express? What makes it express versus just extra lanes?
Yeah, so it will be, it hasn't been determined whether it's being tolled or not. But it will be managed through some capacity, so either via tolls or by access. So we have limited ingress and egress locations where you can take from the general use lanes into the express lanes. and then continue using those express lanes.
Christina, you have a follow-up?
One follow-up question, yes. And which is intended to be first, the north or the south section?
We don't currently have funding for either at this time,
Okay.
so that's also has not been determined yet.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Ashley? I see Josh Frank. Anybody else? I'm developing my queue. Josh, Hoyt. All right, you two are in line. Josh first.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So I went ahead and I'll share this information with staff so that they can share it to the rest of the board. But recently, there's been a launching of an online calculator that essentially is able to take inputs for new lane miles being added based off of a metro service area, and then calculate the induced demand in terms of vehicle miles traveled for any interstate widening project, in addition to its greenhouse gas emissions. So I went ahead and ran this project in total for both segments at 4 lanes each, over 24 miles for the south and 18 miles for the north. That essentially equals, let me do my math, 24 plus 18 is 42 times 4, 168 new lane miles being added to our interstate system. Per this calculator, which has been peer reviewed and is in partnership with Transportation for America, as well as other really reputable sources, this project will induce an additional 800,000 to 1.3 million new trips per year in terms of vehicle miles traveled, and which is about the same as 109,000 new cars or light trucks and 57 million gallons of gasoline. Cumulative emissions projections range from 4 million metric tons of CO2, new CO2 emissions, as well as a top range of 13.3 million metric tons of CO2. So this is, in no uncertain terms, a generator of both carbon emissions and also the net negative impacts to removing tree canopy and possible environmental impacts, which have yet to be determined based off the impact study. But just in terms of new cars being added to the system via induced demand, this is a massive increase to our current system. So I would encourage DOT to use this tool to be fully transparent when it comes to the PD&E process on just how many new trips are being generated by a project of this size and scale. I know that that's typically part of the PD&E study to figure out how this impacts the system overall, but it's also important to know we are further incentivizing folks to drive when we do projects like this. So ultimately, the end result is that those lanes fill up, and then we have to repeat this process over again in 20 or 30 years, so sometimes sooner. So I think it's really important for that to be known to the public ahead of time, that this is not a congestion relief. This is a congestion creator. And so I would encourage FDOT to be very honest with those metrics. And then the second thing I would say is that I'm always sort of left for words when it comes to seeing these sorts of projects, because it seems like DOT finds funds for these magically. Tallahassee somehow invents funding when it comes to these projects, and yet when it comes to doing things like bike and ped infrastructure, which we just saw based off of the previous report, is in the $13 million range, which is great, don't get me wrong, but this is a massive study and a massive project with a huge footprint and cost that, if I had to venture, it's not funded now, but given an approval, somehow Tallahassee would find the several $100 million to pay for it. Seems like that's the only case that they can do that. But I would just say that I don't know who wants this project and who's asking for it. It seems like it's been in the tip for a long time now, but maybe gone under the radar. But I think we have higher needs. And so I would encourage DOT to shift some of their thinking and challenge you to say that, why are we doing this when we have so many other needs that can actually reduce trips off of our network. So with that, I'll yield back to the vice chair, but I will send that tool out to the rest of the staff. It's a very useful tool. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. And could you just real quickly cite that calculator again?
Yeah, give me one sec to alt tab to the right tab here. It is https://shift.rmi.org.
All right, thank you. Hoyt, you were next in the queue.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Hensel, for your presentation. I was curious, in your time in doing projects for the DOT, have you ever done an express lane project that was not ultimately tolled?
Me personally?
Are you aware of an express lane project that the state has done that was not ultimately tolled?
Kirk, can you help answer that? I haven't done a ton of express lane projects.
Yeah, we haven't. In District 7, this is Kirk Buckner, I'm sorry, DOT. In District 7, the only express lanes that we've done have been related to TV Next. And so the ones that we're implementing now are on the Howard Franklin Bridge and over in Pinellas County, and they are tolled.
Okay. Are you, because I'm not, the reason I'm asking is, I know there's some discussion about there hadn't been a decision as to whether these would be tolled or not. And to my knowledge, I'm not familiar with any express lanes in District 7 or in the state really that do not have a toll. And so I was just curious if you all could name one. And the reason I ask is because, I mean, if there aren't any, then what is the state trying to decipher as to whether or not it's going to toll it or not, because it just seems like that's going to be what ends up happening.
Well, our policy is that at the time of implementation, we will evaluate the need, whether the demand needs to be controlled by tolling. That's one of the ways that you can control the demand and make sure that there's a safe travels and that reliable travel in those lanes. And so that's just one tool to use. And another is for access, to not allow vehicles in at every interchange or something of that nature. And so that's how you manage the congestion.
Sure. I understand that conceptually. I think my concern is that and this is no fault of Ms. Hensel, certainly, because obviously you haven't made the decision. My concern is that there's not really a chance that these aren't going to be tolled. And I think that's an important consideration for commuters to know, especially if you're driving from South County and you're driving over 20 miles in an express lane. I imagine that's going to carry a pretty significant toll to it. And I think as Ms. Bosworth pointed out, it's a little confusing to me, the access discussion on those in South County, because there are so few exits anyway. I mean, you're potentially talking about 15 miles of, where nobody can get on and off. I mean, is that part of the discussion there, Ms. Hensel?
Yeah, the intent of the express lanes is to provide a through trip, from South County to North Hillsborough County. We don't want to provide access at every single interchange, because then it does become just another general use lane. Say that again, sir.
In the urban areas, where their interchanges are closely spaced.
Right. So like we said, it's either managed, by tolls or by access, and that would be determined when the project's implemented.
Okay. Does the DOT ever take into consideration of making these a hot lane?
Like a high occupancy vehicle lane?
So a hot lane being the hybrid between a toll and an HOV lane. So essentially single occupancy vehicles pay a toll, high occupancy vehicles don't pay the toll.
Yeah, hot lanes are created when there's existing HOV lanes, and then vehicles that don't have HOV, they will be allowed to use it for tolls. So that's really converting an existing HOV lane to a toll lane.
Well, there's nothing preventing the state from making new lanes, hot lanes. I mean, I don't think there's any legal prevention on that, is there?
I think there's a mechanism for the state to use express lanes to either, they could be multi occupancy vehicle, that could be controlled by that feature. That's another one of the features that we could use to control that. So in essence, yes, it could be a hot lane scenario.
Okay. Are you aware of any hot lanes used by the state or in District 7?
There are none in District 7, but I think there are some in the Miami area that were converted from HOV to hot lanes.
Yeah, I want to be very specific though, but I'm not talking about I'm talking about specifically the hot lane. And I'll conclude with this because I realize this could go on for a while. I certainly have concern about the repeated use of toll lanes in our community, and I understand, you know, the economic supply and demand and controlling the flow, and I get all that conceptually, but you're still talking about commuters, especially commuters in many cases of you know, average means, having to get somewhere, having to pay a lot of money to use these toll lanes. I'm sure you've seen examples elsewhere in the country where they're not capped, like in the DC area, we're talking about $40 to go, you know, 6 miles. That's a lot of money for most people. So I would hope that the state, if they're going to toll it, would at least consider the concept of a hot lane, which would allow commuters who do choose to carpool, which has multiple benefits of taking more cars off the road, less pollution, less gasoline use, that they would at least consider the option for drivers that choose to take that responsible step to be able to use the express lanes without charge. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Just a slight aside. For those of you who are interested, the calculator that Josh Frank referenced during his comments, he was kind enough to post them up in our chat. So if you weren't able to follow along on your legal pad, you might want to jot that down if you hadn't seen it before. Okay, there was I think I see Nikki Rice hidden behind one of my forms here. Okay, Nikki, go ahead.
Before I ask my question, I just wanted to see if Rich Clarendon, if you would clarify something for me. My understanding was, and this was during the last session, that all future express lanes would be tolled per state of Florida. Is that no longer the case?
No, I don't think that's the case.
Has that been a change now during this legislative? And I know right now they're lobbying currently up there for transportation. That's going on right now. So do you know if there's been any changes to that state mandate that all future express lanes will have tolls?
I'm not sure I heard. I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Can you hear me, Rich?
Say it again, please.
Okay. When last we looked at this, particularly last year, the state had determined that all future express lanes would be tolled. Is that no longer the case?
I don't think that's the case.
But nobody seems to know.
Nikki,
Does anybody know?
Nikki, this is Rick Fernandez.
Yes.
Yeah, that comment or that issue has been brought up at several meetings over the last year and a half. And I've heard repeatedly that that policy is no longer in effect. It was at one time, I think during Secretary Passad's administration, but no longer. Now, it may be that one of the DOT folks have a different thought on that, but I think we put that to bed at a meeting in the past.
Okay, so it's not really a question, but it is a comment to Ashley. I'm assuming that just as you go forward, I'm assuming you're going to be somebody who does some of the presentations at the Hilton. Is that correct for this project? Are you going to be doing some? Are you part of the team that's going to be presenting this to the public at the Hilton? Okay. So when we're sitting here on this committee and we're very familiar with these types of projects, what I find is that language use to us is even confusing, and we're trying to clarify language. So I just want to make sure that people, when they do, and if they do show up to this meeting, aren't being misled. Because when we say to people, we're gonna make your commute easier, we're going to get you there faster, we're going to help you, create a better situation for your community. And when you reference express lanes, I do think you need to be transparent that these could be in bringing a cost to people to use, that these may not be available for everyone. And unfortunately, these projects, when they're presented to the public, is almost like we gloss over these details and they're like, yeah, that sounded great. Then they're like, wait a minute, what? So I certainly hope, it makes me almost want to show up for this one, because I think it's just, I feel like I still don't have an answer. And I'm sitting here directly with you guys on whether or not these are good. So it's just something that feels as usual, and this is not an offense to you, Ashley, but this is how a lot of projects are sold to communities. It's like glaze over these major details and look like we're solving a problem. So I certainly hope there's going to be a little more transparency and maybe a little more as far as answering whether or not these people are looking at toll roads. Because a lot of people who live in that area and who are commuting cannot afford that. So, and it's just something to be aware of.
Okay, thank you for your input.
All right, we have 5 minutes left on this agenda item. Anybody else have comment for Ashley? Question? I don't see any hands. I hear no voices. I see nothing in the chat. Okay, Ashley, I have this, Rick Fernandez. I have what I hope is just a quick question, a quick Q&A. Regarding the right-of-way acquisition issue. You had one slide that you may or may not be able to get to. I know you had some issue with the thing advancing on you. You were using some terminology in your presentation that I just wasn't familiar with, frankly.
Okay.
Regarding I guess the underlying reason supporting the need for right-of-way acquisition. I think some of it had to do with stormwater. I don't remember the terminology. Do you know what I'm talking about? Can you get to it?
Yeah, so we have right-of-way acquisition for stormwater management facilities, pond sites, and floodplain compensation sites. And then around some of the interchanges for ramp improvements.
Okay, floodplain compensation sites and ponds. So ponds, I understand. Floodplain compensation sites. What does that look like? What is that?
So when we widen the road to the median or to the outside and we impact the floodplain, we have to compensate for those impacts somewhere else on the project.
Meaning what? I mean, you got spoon feed me here. I think you're talking to a 6th grader.
Sorry.
Yeah, and this is Kirk. Let me help Ashley with that. Anytime you impact the floodplain, you got to have compensate a cup per cup. Like if you're impacting a cubic feet, you have to have a cubic feet. You have to have a cubic feet of storage somewhere else. You may have to scrape down some uplands to get that cubic feet, but your net impact for the floodplain on the project has to be 0.
Okay. And have you good folks identified the areas that will be impacted by the right-of-way acquisition?
We have, and those will be shown on the roll plots at the public hearing, as well as on any materials that we put online associated with the public hearing. They're in our report as well.
All right, and to your knowledge, does the right-of-way acquisition involve the taking of any individual properties, be they homes, apartments, businesses, etc.?
There are some relocations. I don't have those exact numbers with me today, but there are some business and residential relocations, I believe, on both segments.
Okay, but you even have a ballpark figure as to how many people we're talking about being impacted, if not buildings?
I can find it and I can get back to you on that.
Okay, I'd appreciate it. And
Okay.
obviously that would be something that you would want to have for your public hearing. I would think folks would be
It is.
interested.
It is. It's definitely something we'll have at the public hearing. We're still working through some of those numbers to provide in our matrix and in our documents at the hearing.
Have you already begun putting notifications out to folks that are in the line of fire, if you will, regarding right-of-way acquisitions?
We have had several small group meetings along the corridor, and we'll be sending out notifications for the hearing in January.
Okay. Thank you. I'm done. Anybody else? All right, I see Josh, we're getting close to timing out, buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just a quick question. Thank you for Kurt. Would it be fair to say that those areas of flood retention, essentially it's a land bank for any wetlands that are impacted? Is that safe to say that that's probably the primary use for that sort of right-of-way acquisition?
No, it's not for wetlands. That's a different mitigation for wetland impacts. This is specifically for floodplains, making sure that there's like a zero rise in the floodplain.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right. Ashley, very interesting presentation. I'm sure we could probably keep talking about this for a while. I know I'm interested, would like to follow up with you. But we're pretty much at the end of our time.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Ready to move on? Line item B under section 7 of our agenda is the HART Autonomous Vehicle Pilot Project. Dan Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning. Dan Rodriguez. How are you? I'm not sure if you guys are going to put the presentation up or do you need me to do it?
Whichever you like.
I've been having some problems here. It might be easier if you guys would do it for me. That way we don't have any hangups. Been kind of jittery. I don't know what it is on my end here.
Okay.
So maybe I might need to turn my video off just in case, but.
Let me see if I can bring it up for you. Bear with me. Okay.
Awesome. If you could put it on presenter view, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there. Okay. Try this one more time here.
Awesome.
Everybody
Thank
see
you.
that?
Yes. Thank you again, Dan Rodriguez, project manager with the Hillsborough Transit Authority. Everybody knows this is HART. My presentation today would be to show you our pilot in downtown Tampa called the HART Smart AV. SMART is an acronym for Smart Mobility alongside Regional Transit. Next slide, please. HART has always taken great pride in. Yes.
Chairman.
Nikki, you have an issue?
Yes, what I have on my end is just a black screen with 3 images of webcams. So I'm not able to see the presentation. It's not showing on my end. Or other people seeing it?
I am seeing Heart Smart AV.
Okay, I don't have it on my end, so I'll just play over here and see if there's an issue, but thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Sorry about that. Again, Hart has always taken great pride in continuously looking for ways to improve our customer service experience. One of the opportunities identified years ago was to provide a transit service along the transit-only corridor we have called the Marion Transitway in downtown Tampa. The Marion Transit Center, or MTC, shown here with the blue star, is a transit center that connects numerous bus routes. Immediately next to MTC is this 300 space parking lot that helps serve commuter in the downtown Tampa. Currently, these commuters either decide to walk from there into downtown, or they take one of our bus routes down from MTC south along the corridor on Marion Street. And that's highlighted by the yellow line. That's Marion Transit Way. The red line is obviously our streetcar system that terminates at Whiting and goes all the way up to Ybor City. Hart was granted funding from the DOT to provide an automated mobility service that provided an additional layer of customer convenience by providing this automated shuttle that traveled along half a mile down Marion Street, down to the southern terminus at Whiting. Along this route, we had 3 stops. We had 1 railroad crossing, we had 8 signalized intersections, and we had, at those signalized intersections, we had dedicated short-range communication units that was placed by an earlier project by the Expressway Authority. As part of the solicitation, Hart's also requested that the vendor develop an operations plan that would give us 10-minute headways on this corridor. We were able to operate for 13 hours in order to serve the workers and residents of Tampa. Customer operations would also be up to a year, and if successful, and if funding allowed, of course, we'd like to opt for 2 more additional years. Next slide, please. Within the solicitation documents, we wanted to be absolutely clear what the measures of success were. The project was not to be to prove the effectiveness of technology, but foremost provide a transportation service to the customer. We wanted to make sure that the service was safe for our customers, both real and perceived. This is why it's not measuring the number of incidents, but also hard braking events. And from that, we had surveys of the riders. It's important to note that taking partnership approach to this project was key. So we wanted to learn about the technology as it matured. So for example, if we set a maximum number of hard braking events or concierge engagements to determine success, but we also wanted to identify what was causing these braking events and these manual operations. So we could either better prepare the corridor, or in such incidents, the vendor could adjust the technology to avoid these incidents in the future. We always want to keep the customer experience first, so we ensure that the service was always reliable, and hence operation hours and quality of service was directly tied to the vendor payment. Next slide. The solicitation was very prescriptive in its expectations. The technology and the service we did could be effectively evaluated against one of the other proposers. The requirements were grouped together in 4 distinct systems, namely the operating of the system requirements, highly automated vehicle requirements, and operations management requirements. A few of them, the highlights included the vehicles absolutely had to be ADA compliant. They had to include a ramp and capacity for the wheelchair riders, braille, audio announcements, buttons inside and outside to engage operations, and of course, we need air conditioning to the comfort in this warm climate that we have. So naturally, the vehicle was required to obey all traffic rules, including stopping for non-signalized railroad crossings that we had to cross, the traffic signals. It had to be tested for collision avoidance, provide security cameras, just like on our buses, to transfer data, inside and outside the vehicle. The vehicle also had audio alerts to help with visually impaired folks as well, and pedestrians. The vendor was also responsible for all operating and maintenance, including, providing the concierge that were on board, training them. Operating and safety protocols had to be provided as well. The vendor was also to provide any software updates associated with the service and during the contract period. Next slide. The project also broken down into 5 phases. This was to help minimize risk to HART. So during project development and operations, each phase had specific milestones. For example, phase 1, the pilot, the vendor was not paid until the operational hazard and preliminary hazard assessment and the standard operating procedure documents were not only submitted but approved by HART. Also, another phase, all testing of the actual vehicles to be used in the pilot had to be accepted by HART. The vendor was only paid in phase 3 once he got it up and running. He was only paid for the operational hours he was in service. Next slide. Stakeholders. Let's just go over that real quick. We were fortunate that vendor turned out to be Beep. Beep is based in Lake Nona, Florida, which is just an hour from Tampa, outside of Orlando. Even during this time of COVID, we were able to get some staff members over there to familiarize ourselves with their vehicle and do some testing at their facility. In this picture here, you can see this was August 24th of 2020. We were able to have the vehicles on site and testing on the Marion Transitway itself. These tests were the ADA ramps, various of the transit stations, the wheelchair security, the braking for pedestrians and nearby objects. We ended up doing, because we didn't want it to go around the block down at Whiting, so we had to do a U-turn down at the bottom of the transitway at Whiting. We had several members from HART as well as FDOT leadership who participated in the testing firsthand. As you can see in the picture, that is one of our safety guys who I guess drew the short straw and was the one to step out in front of the vehicle as it did stop in time for him. Next slide, please. Some of the other stakeholders we had were our first responders. Here in this photo, this was September 30th, 3rd and 4th of 2020. HART and Beep staff invited first responders from Tampa Fire Rescue and the Tampa Police Department to train on the vehicle familiarity, including the battery disconnections in the event of an emergency. The fire rescue team was very hands-on. They almost took the thing apart and sent multiple shifts to see. So they were very enthused, and they sent just about everybody from that firehouse over. We also participated in roll calls with TPD. Just about every hour that they had a roll call, we participated just to give local police, hey, this is going to be on the street, and give them some familiarity with the vehicle too. Next slide, please.
Sorry, hold on.
Yeah, there's a little delay, no problem.
Here we go.
We had buy-in from project sponsors it's key to your success. So here on October 9th of 2020, we had a ribbon cutting event. The event was attended by the Mayor of Tampa, Jane Castor, the U.S. Representative Kathy Castor. We had Jeff Bandy, State Senator, our chair, Mariella Smith. At the time, it was our ICEO was Ruthie Reyes Burkhart, the CEO of Beep, Joe Moya, and our District 7 Secretary, David Gwynn, were in attendance, and we had their full support on this project. Next slide. Another key thing was HART also included the ADA community early on in the rollout. So the ADA coordinators from the City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and some of our current wheelchair users on our system were invited to participate in what we called an ADA Accessibility Day. This was the first interaction for most of them for the use of an AV. We got great reviews from them. Some of them were very, very hesitant to get on, but once they were on, they truly enjoyed their ride. Next slide. As mentioned earlier, the procurement was done with a completed concept of operations and shelter requirements. This allowed all the submittals to be evaluated on an equal footing. It was extremely important to say what you wanted right at the front and what you can and will not accept. And we made sure that in our concept of operations. The more information we put on the expectations that could be provided to the vendor, the more accurate the number of submittals. So previous experience with vendors also ensured that multiple vendors were capable of meeting the concept of operations and shuttle vehicle requirements so that unrealistic performance expectations were not included in the procurement. Just to be completely transparent, this was the third time we put it out on the street to do. Learning from the first two times, you know, you need to ask exactly what you want for. So we wanted to be also lockstep with the NHTSA requirements for having a street legal vehicle that met all the federal regulations. That was crucial to the procurement. Next slide. A monthly report was always given by BEEP. As shown in the screen, this was a sample of it. Generally, the course of the pilot, the vehicle's availability was anywhere from 92 to 99%. We had limited unplanned downtime with the vehicles. Sometimes it was a software upgrade that didn't quite take overnight, things like that, and it caused a reboot in the morning, but it was very minimal. Over the first 2 months, we had about 2 dozen hard braking events. So, you know, we kind of went back and looked at the video, looked at you know, concierge notes. They turned out to be our buses. We're not spacing correctly with the vehicle, because the vehicle does go about 10 to 15 miles an hour, and our buses tend to go a little faster down the transitway. So that was an operational issue that we had to clear up. But once we spaced the buses out a little better, because they were on the road at the same time, that kind of eliminated. That's all I have on that side. Next slide, please. We did have quite a few lessons learned for best practices, not just from the procurement, but from what we learned during the testing and things like that. One thing, HART undertook the project to address a specific challenge, not just to you know, for technology's sake. We wanted to make sure that the project served the transit customer well. This was critical to justify the funding from DOT and maintain DOT and management support throughout the project. So as you can define in the terms of the operation expectations, participant roles, vehicle requirements, the more the better. This helped vendors prepare the proposals to meet the goals. It evaluated them appropriately. This is especially important for a project where it needs to be clear where the technology needs to be able to do what the service needs to be able to do. So, you know, say what you want and get what you need. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, involving leadership was critical. So not only to maintain support, but also to manage the expectations. You know, due to COVID, we did not get the ridership numbers that we were hoping for, but it was really, you know, the technology was maturing. It was important to establish that, you know, what the technology can do and what it was being tested. The technology deployed is still not capable of rerouting based on an obstacle detection. During this pilot, we had a hotel being built between Jackson and Kennedy, and of course, you know, no matter how many times you talk to the contractor, deliveries always ended up being on our street, and they would block the street on a regular, and we had to take over manual operations at that time. So there are things like that that's still maturing. It doesn't really detect things, and you can't plan for them appropriately yet. It's important to, to test and verify the capabilities of the vehicle. As mentioned, we performed some testing on the Marion Street before we started service. One of the things that really came up when we were doing that testing was the ADA ramp. It's essential in transit to be able to serve everyone. We had a problem with the slope. The ramp that they initiated did not meet the 8% slope for the ramp that met on the platform, so they had to do some adjustments to the vehicle so that it lowered, kind of kneeled like the bus. We also noticed that the wheelchair tie downs became a tripping hazard where they were located, so we made some changes on that. Another thing that we also learned was the LiDAR system that kind of guides the vehicle down the corridor does not perform well at all during the rain. It creates sudden stops. It sees things that aren't there. That's something that we've, not only us but other agencies, have taken back to the manufacturers and to the LiDAR systems to try to compensate for rain. During rain events, we'd have to shut down service. Next slide, please. The pilot at the Marion Street Transitway has ended on June 30th. We kind of ran the course of the pilot. We learned just about everything we were supposed to learn. With that, we still had some remaining balance left on the state grant. So Beep, Hart, FDOT leadership, they started looking after other corridors to maybe generate some numbers in ridership, because that seems to be like the only factor we were missing. This funding was tied to this corridor. It was a fixed guideway grant for technology. So it was supposed to either be used for a transit corridor like the Transitway or for something on the streetcar. So we chose to try this AV project. Right now they're looking for a downtown circulator. That's been the discussion lately. Next slide, please. Right now, currently Beep in the city of Tampa and Hart are in the process of starting a new route over by the Tampa Armature Works, running along a similar route of the Riverwalk. Some of the stops are at Waterworks Park, at the Barrymore Hotel, and then terminating and turning around near the Strass Center, right over by the Glazer Museum. The remaining funding will last only a few months, so various stakeholders are actually seeking some sponsorships from local interests in that downtown area to try to keep the shuttle going after the funds deplete. Seems like right now we're going to probably run till the end of the year. Service looks like it's going to start. There is a kickoff meeting, ribbon cutting, starting of service on Friday at 10 o'clock at the Armature Works building. And that pretty much concludes, next slide, that concludes my presentation. I really want to appreciate everyone for allowing me to share this with you today.
All right, Dan, thank you very much. An interesting presentation. I'll note that just by way of time increment, because I want to be respectful of everyone's time, especially if you went to the trouble of actually being here today. I want to get you out on time. That presentation took all the time that we had available. If there are any questions or comments, I would only ask that you present them quickly and we'll move on. So anything? Do I see any hands? Josh?
Yeah, just one very quick question comment. Dan, I appreciate the presentation. I think the pilot was fairly successful. It's interesting to learn some of the lessons. I'm getting some feedback from somebody. There we go. I think one of the biggest lessons, and you touched on it, is that the key to ridership for any transit service is the health of the street in terms of being an active environment. Marion, as we all know, is an inactive environment. It's very desolate. There's no businesses fronting it. There's no pedestrian activity really of any great importance. So I understand Marion was the corridor that was tied to the grant, but my concern is that Doyle Carlton is very similar. It has the Riverwalk, which is a big plus, but the new pilot route, I'm concerned, is fairly similar in terms of, you know, not a lot of businesses fronting it, not a lot of really good reason to take the Beep shuttle as opposed to the Riverwalk, which is quite nice. So I would suggest that maybe, I think the best use of a pilot like this is to solve some problems for some areas that maybe lack connectivity but do have a lot of pedestrian access. So I think you're kind of close. For my mind, you know, I would love to see some interconnectivity between, say, Armature Works heading east on 7th Avenue towards, you know, Franklin Street corridor and then eventually towards Ybor City. That connectivity east to west is just horrendous. Yet we have, if you've ever been to the food halls or, you know, Armature Works or anything like that, there are a ton of people that cross Tampa and Florida Ave, Tampa Street and Florida Ave, to try and get between those two areas. So to me, the pilot, you know, one of the lessons to learn from it is how can we best use this as a tool to supplement things that we already have and have issues with. So I appreciate that, and I know you're limited on funds and all that sort of thing, but I would just throw that out there as a suggestion moving forward, is how to frame that mindset of where can we implement this as a future pilot. So that's all. Thanks, Dan.
All right.
Hey Josh, yeah,
Dan.
I can't agree with you more, man. There's a lot of places we'd rather have run it. It's just a matter of the funding was going to expire at a certain time, and what can we get NHTSA to approve? Where we did the Riverwalk route now, we had to change the speed of the road. There was a lot of the city of Tampa hoops had to be done in order to be able to get your NHTSA permit approved, and we didn't have a lot of time. But I'm with you. There's definitely a lot of opportunity in other places that we can definitely look at. Agreed.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Given time constraints, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, but we'll keep tabs on you. And for those of you that are fairly new to the committee, I'll note that this item is on the agenda because it was requested by one of our members during member interest. So, you know, when you speak up during that section of the agenda, it tends to produce something, sometimes months later, but nonetheless. So this is an example of that. So I hope you guys will keep that in mind as you come up with some hot topics of your own going forward. The next item on our agenda, item D under section 7, is FDOT 56th Street and 50th Street corridor planning study. According to my agenda cover sheet, Jennifer Musselman is our presenter from Kettleson and Associates. Jennifer, are you? Yeah, there you are. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. And while I get my screen set up, I'll hand it over to Brian Schroyer, the department project manager, to kick us off.
Hey, Brian.
Hey.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm Brian Schroyer with the FDOT Planning Office. I just want to introduce a little bit, let you know I'm here for questions, but Jennifer's going to do the main body of the presentation. This was the 50th, 56th Street corridor study we're looking at. Quite a long corridor all the way from Adamo up to ends at Fletcher, which isn't necessarily a department roadway, that last Fowler to Fletcher section, but we included it also to complete the whole corridor. Have a lot of stuff we've been doing on this project, and we'll just get you up to date with what we have now and then what's going to happen in the future. So I'll kick it off over to Jennifer.
Thanks. And can I get an audible confirmation that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
See you.
So I'm going to start with going through the overall purpose for the project, where we are in the process, talk through some of the issues and opportunities that we've identified so far, a draft purpose and needs statement that we'd like to get your input on before taking to the public, and then talk through some of the next steps for that public engagement. So this project was identified as a need initially out of the TPO's Vision Zero Action Plan. There are two segments that are on the high injury network, a segment on 50th Street and a segment on 56th Street. So this project is really about finding ways to improve safety for all the users out here. And then also to develop a vision to connect some of the the various land uses around here as we transition from some industrial uses to neighborhoods to more commercial and downtown environments. So as Brian mentioned, we are looking at just about the full stretch of 50th and 56, starting at the Solomon Expressway ramps to the south, and then continuing north to Fletcher with that segment between Fowler and Fletcher, which is county maintained. There are currently 6 lanes on the southern end, but 4 lanes for the majority of the roadway as you continue north. There are sidewalks for the most part, and on-street bike lanes for a majority, with the exception of this area in Temple Terrace, where bikes do share the lane with vehicles. The posted speed varies quite a bit and transitions back and forth from 35 to 50 miles per hour, and we'll get into that in more detail in a future slide. And then transit is also a huge emphasis on this corridor, with the Net Park Transfer Center located immediately adjacent and some high frequency service on and crossing 56. So we're about a third of the way through the project now. So we've gone through a lot of the existing conditions analysis to figure out what the potential problems are out here, and are currently in this phase of defining the purpose and need of the project. Following this round of presentations, we'll be taking this information to the public to get their input before working to identify alternatives and evaluate them, and then identify some short, medium, and long-term solutions. We've been working with a project advisory group, which is made up of the 4 agencies along this corridor: City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Temple Terrace 3, sorry. We've included the TPO and the Planning Commission as part of this outreach, HART and the Expressway Authority, Florida Highway Patrol, the University of South Florida, which is located very close to the corridor, and then Hillsborough County Schools, of which there are several within the study area. We've also reached out to a series of neighborhood, community organizations, and businesses to get their input as well. And we'll continue to use this list of contacts to get public outreach as we continue through and help spread the word for some of our public meetings. A little bit of feedback if folks maybe can mute. Thank you. So getting into the synthesis of our existing conditions, of course, multimodal safety is a big one. There's a high number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes along the corridor. A lot of multimodal activity happening pretty much everywhere, including in those industrial areas to the south. There were 11 fatalities in the 5-year period that we looked at, which was contributing to why the TPO's Vision Zero Action Plan had identified these segments. And also some lighting concerns. A lot of the corridor has been upgraded to the newer LED light standards, but there are some places that have not yet. As I mentioned, it's one of HART's most robust transit corridors. So Route 6 runs for the majority of the study area with pretty frequent service. And then we also have that Net Park Transfer Center here, which sees a lot of riders getting on and off and transferring. Some of the other major transfer points include Bush Boulevard here. You can see the larger dots for folks getting on and off the bus every day, and Fowler Avenue. So a lot of folks riding both up and down 56, but then also using it to connect to some of the key east-west routes as well. From a vehicle perspective, things are generally operating pretty well. Most of the segments and intersections are currently operating at level of service D or better. And level of service D is the FDOT target for this roadway. There are a few segments that operate at LOS, E, or F, which would be failing, but most of those are actually due to constrained intersections. So it's not that there's not enough room on the segments for all of the cars, it's that they're having to stop at the next signal up. And so that's causing some congestion on the segments. There is quite a bit of redevelopment focus within Temple Terrace. So you can see this is the Temple Terrace vision map with 56th Street here in the heart of their downtown planned in this pink area. So if you go out there today, you can see already a lot of development, a lot of very urban development, you know, with buildings close to the street, So the character of this area is going to change pretty significantly over the next few years, and we want to identify a transportation solution that supports those future plans. In the southern portion, I mentioned there are quite a bit of industrial land uses. These are some of the last remaining industrial uses within the city of Tampa. So there's a desire to preserve that land and not have as many changes in that portion. So I mentioned early on that speed is a concern out here. You can see the posted speed changes back and forth as you go. The lowest speeds are in that Temple Terrace downtown area at 35 miles per hour. And then you're seeing some of the highest speeds at 50 miles per hour here. But regardless of what is posted or signed out here, folks are continually going 50 miles per hour and above as they travel along the roadway. So in some cases that might not be speeding per se, but still a very high rate of speed. In other places it does result in some pretty significant speeding. We also noticed that the posted speed does not necessarily reflect the vehicle operations. So in some of these low posted speed sections, vehicle operations are actually quite good and operating well. And in some of the higher posted speed sections, they're not as good. There's more congestion. So we're not seeing a tie between higher posted speed and the ability for cars to actually travel more seamlessly. This corridor serves a very diverse population. So 2/3 of the community are non-white, with a significant Black and Hispanic population. There's also a lot of youth along this corridor, especially in the center of the corridor. And with the number of schools we have, King High School notably, there's also an elementary school, the University of South Florida, there's a technical college. So a lot of children and young adults that are traveling up and down, trying to cross the street all throughout the corridor. And then a relatively low median income. So the majority of homes along this corridor have a median income less than the county average, which is that $53,000. And there are several pockets that actually have incomes less than $17,000 a year, which would be more severe poverty. So all of that has led us to our draft purpose and needs statement. So this is a very loaded statement, so I'll break it down. But eliminate fatal and severe injury crashes. So really trying to achieve that vision zero and safety first. Through prioritizing accessibility of multimodal options. So we want to provide good access to ways to get around in addition to driving, especially for those low income populations. Through design and operational strategies, so both roadway changes and more technology solutions that support existing and future places. So a transportation solution that supports what's out there today, but also that supports some of that redevelopment that we're expecting, especially in Temple Terrace. When you break that down into some specific needs, we have increased the frequency and safety of crossing opportunities for bicyclists and pedestrians. There are some long stretches that don't have signalized crossings out there. Design and operate the street consistent with surrounding land uses to support existing and future place types. So again, getting that transportation solution to support the land use. Improve transit access and service efficiency. Balance freight and vehicle mobility with the needs of vulnerable users at conflict points. So we know freight is going to continue to operate in this corridor and have a heavy influence, but how can we make the interactions with bicyclists and pedestrians more comfortable and safe for everyone? Support safe local resident and business access needs. Provide better multimodal access for communities of concern, so those low income populations in particular, and then improve bicyclist and pedestrian safety and comfort along the corridor. So while there are sidewalks and bike lanes along the majority of this street, we're seeing a lot of bicyclists still riding on the sidewalk as they're not comfortable being so close to moving traffic. So our next steps, after we get through these round of presentations this month, we are planning a public meeting. It's currently noted for December 2nd. We may be pushing that out a week so we can regroup with the committee and confirm the date either way, so you have that information. And it'll be both in person at the Lightfoot Celebration Center, and there will be a webinar option for online attendance as well. After that public involvement, then as I mentioned earlier, we'll start identifying alternatives and preparing some concepts, and then take those back to the public in the summer, and then put together that corridor implementation plan to identify the different solutions and ways to move them forward. So with that, happy to answer any questions and take any comments from the group.
Jennifer, thank you. Appreciate that very interesting presentation. This is Rick Fernandez again. I have a quick question for you. Maybe I missed it. Could have just done a flyover. I did not hear the buzz term in your presentation for transit-oriented development, TOD. Does that concept figure into anything that you're doing along this corridor? And if you did comment on it, I apologize. Maybe you could just point me to the right slide.
Yeah, no, you're right. We have not used that phrase formally in this study to this point. But I'd say that redevelopment area in Temple Terrace has potential for transit-oriented development and is already kind of going that way. And then the future of Net Park, that transfer center, could be another potential opportunity. So that's something we can continue to coordinate with Hart on to possibly formalize those opportunities.
All right. I guess if you're looking for suggestions, I would suggest that issue become more of a targeted feature of your study, analysis, and presentations, because it kind of sounds like it's there, but almost as if we're going to accidentally stumble into it rather than it being part of the plan.
Right. Okay.
For whatever
Thank
that's
you.
worth. Okay, and any comments or questions from the committee? I see none. Am I missing anybody? Going once, going twice? All right, Jennifer, Brian, I thank you both for the presentation, and we're gonna move along.
All right, thank
All right,
you.
thank you all.
Thank you. All right, folks, we are now to agenda item 7F. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, for some reason, I just went to a blank white screen here. All right, the next line item is future leaders in planning. Davita Franklin to present. Davita, you there? Yep, there you are. Hey, good morning.
Good morning. All right, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share information about FLIP Junior, Future Leaders in Planning. And just give me a moment so that I can share my screen. All right. One more moment here.
Sounds like somebody's smoke detector has gone off.
All right.
Okay, if you haven't discovered your mute button, please do so. All right, Davita.
All right, can everyone see my screen here?
I can.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know if that was can't or can, so thank you.
Can,
right,
got
so,
it. Got it.
I want to.
Yes.
So I want to start off with this quote by Maya Angelou. And it says that each child belongs to all of us, and they will bring us a tomorrow in direct relation to the responsibility we have shown to them. And if I could sum up our experience with Flip Junior in just a slide, this would be it. This is actually a photo of 3 of the young folks that we worked with at the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. They visited our offices on the 18th floor at County Center, and they were just in awe. They were in awe of the lens that we have, that we use and part of our recommendations to serve their community. And we were in awe at them and their awe, because the beautiful thing about it is that they had looked at our community in a way that we see every day when we go into the office, and they had not considered, which is that they are a part of something bigger. And it's important for them to have a voice in that, and to perhaps even have a career in making recommendations in the planning field. So I just wanted to share that because that was just an amazing experience for all of us as we looked upon them, as they looked upon their city. So Flip Junior, as I said before, stands for Future Leaders in Planning. And I do want to thank the folks who supported the project, such as the sponsors and all of the staff. So we did have sponsorship from Florida Bicycle Association, White Bowers, AICP, Element Engineering Group, and also Ameriflow LLC. So we really appreciate the time and effort and funding that folks had put out for the project. So getting back to some information about the program, it's actually a hybrid of FLIP, Future Leaders in Planning, which is led by Lynn Miranda, my supervisor, and also our public relations strategist. And that program has been around for a while, and it serves high schoolers. And also it merged the programming of a Vision Zero project that Gina Torres, our Vision Zero project manager, had put together for the summer 2019 for the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. So the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association approached us again this year and said, hey, we love what you do with the FLIP program, and we also love what you did with Vision Zero. Is there a way to just put it all together and make it high energy and fun? And that's where we came up with the FLIP Junior program. We had 12 volunteers from our staff that worked on delivering the curriculum. We had a very small budget, so it's actually something that can be highly sustainable when you take a look at this. So we only spent $632 out of $750 that we raised. Some of that is going towards an event that's coming up, so you'll hear about that in a little bit. And we served over 60 households, actually a little bit more. So we served 60 households in over Tampa Heights, Palm River, and also Town and Country, but then we did a one-off workshop at Waimama. So we probably served more about 80 households, and we did about 1 hour at each location 3 times a week, or the 3 locations a week. So we found out very early on that our efforts were actually supporting our update of the non-discrimination and equity plan. So here we have recommendation 2, which says to expand engagement efforts in communities that have been historically excluded from the planning process. And we also have a recommendation that says meet the people where they are. And from these maps here, you'll see that, yes, we were definitely in these underrepresented communities. So we have Town and Country here, Tampa Heights, and also Palm River. And again, we were in Waimama, which is not shown here. These areas have a high instance of zero vehicle households. They're low income. There are a lot of folks in these areas without a high school diploma. And also you'll see that there are a lot of racial minorities in Tampa Heights and in Palm River, as well as ethnic minorities in those 2 areas and in Town and Country. We also realized that the FLIP Junior program supports the measure in the non-discrimination plan to continue to conduct and expand educational outreach about planning, and it's specifically to just keep on expanding and delivering the FLIP and FLIP Junior programs. So we had a few successes and some of the things that we learned and that the kids learned. The kids, they learned a lot and a lot of fun stuff along the way. So here you have Gina Torres, who she's actually reviewing a TikTok video that the kids did about bike and pedestrian safety. And then you also have this young man from Dowdell Middle School. He learned about the basics of zoning, and that's a pop-up city that he did there. They learned how to integrate transportation safety into their community. So you see a couple of roundabouts there in his community that he created. And the kids actually put them all together to make a larger community. So it was a lot of fun for them. Transportation options. Here are the kids from the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association on the streetcar. And what was cool about that is they learned the importance of it, not just as something that you can take for recreation, but also it's going to get extended into their community. So the young man there standing up, he learned, and he actually told our executive director, Melissa Zornita, that, hey, this can open up opportunities for my family. They're learning that the work that we're doing in terms of recommendations are actually having a crucial impact on their communities and their families. The ambassador program means that they're advocates, and that's something that they wore and loved and talked about. They learned how to express themselves in terms of the concerns in their community and how it relates to planning and transportation safety, including recognizing and valuing their safe spaces and beautifying them in the process. So this picture here is the picture of the students at the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association during their beautification project, where they were planting some plants in the planter. And they also did some other things, such as staining wood, planting some landscaping items and landscape restoration, as well as their mural. And what did we learn? We learned that it's so important to be flexible when you're dealing with the community, and in particular communities of concern. They have unique challenges that if we are receptive enough, they'll let us know what they are, and then we can work together to figure out solutions to those challenges. And there are also some community-centric issues that came up. So for unique challenges, for instance, some of the kids, they come from single-parent households. They had to have assistance when getting transportation to the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association. So again, that's a challenge that maybe most of us don't have, but those communities have. And so it was a good experience to be able to see those challenges up close. And then also the kids at Dowdell Middle School, they actually knew folks who unfortunately they met their demise in a traffic accident traffic crash in their community. So that was just another experience that was great for us to be able to work through and talk to them about. And then we got a lot of community support, as you saw from the earlier page, with not just the staff members that supported us, but also the folks who were able to make donations to the program. And resilience in planning, we definitely learned that as planners, we need to be flexible in meeting the needs of the community and not just create a cookie cutter approach. And of course, as I mentioned before, the Flip Junior program highly supports the recommendations in the non-discrimination plan. Now, there are some great opportunities that we can look forward to, not just what we accomplished in the program, but to continue to accomplish in the program. So for instance, increasing diverse representation in the planning field. So there is a book that was written by Tierra Christie, and it's called Elephant in the Planning Room: Overcoming Barriers to Recruitment and Retention of Planners of 8 years old. Really mentioned it before, but unlike Flip, it serves elementary and middle school students. So here you have an elementary school student who she's from an underrepresented community. And according to the research, she's actually better equipped than many of us to make recommendations, or she will be as she grows, to make recommendations for her community. So why not go into her community and really try to engage more with her at an earlier age? Not only will it help increase her quality of life if she chooses to embark upon a career in planning, but it also exposes her community to the planning field and her family, and it just helps to create and build a legacy that we really don't see right now in the planning field. So the research says early recruitment is the answer to addressing that challenge of getting more folks from underrepresented communities to either participate in or to work in the planning field. And of course, that would also take what we delivered, which is a highly engaging and relevant curriculum. Another opportunity is that Flip Junior brought civic engagement to the summer program, where again, they were able to visit County Center and walk downtown and see the results of the planning recommendations made by Plan Hillsborough. And also it allowed for our planners to get that upfront, up close and personal planner field experience that normally does not happen when you're in the office. And we were able to do a lot of community problem solving in terms of transportation safety issues and just coming up with different multimodal solutions. One person said, hey, hoverboards might be the way to go, and they might be right. So it was really cool, just again, just going through that learning experience with the kids. And most importantly, as a community, getting them to see that emotionally, they can really approach problems where they are being a bit more intuitive to getting the answer than what answer they may have already thought would have been the answer, or what has been told to them prior to actually learning more about planning and transportation safety. We created opportunities for these kids to care. So you have that young 8-year-old who now she knows about planning, and she's just 8. She knows that she can have a voice and possibly work in the planning industry. She also now trusts that the organization that is put in place to make these planning recommendations in her community, she now trusts that it works because she learned about it. And she learned about it through us working through small work groups, one-on-one. Here we are actually working on the mural, which is of her likeness. So it ends up where not only is she working with us, is she learning about planning, but now she also participated in a project in her neighborhood that she had a say in, that she helped create. It just helps connect the whole thing. And so again, if I could, I keep saying it was rewarding, and my hope is that you can just feel the passion just coming off of the screen, because that it was definitely a work of labor and passion, and working with these kids and just seeing them evolve as now advocates for their community in planning and transportation safety. We had wonderful opportunities in our partnerships and funding, and so hopefully those will continue. And actually, a shout out to Fatima El Kachi, used to be an intern with us, and now she is the president of the USF SPO, or Student Planning Organization. So she was highly instrumental in making sure that the program had all the bits and pieces that we needed to make it a very engaging program. And then we also had our community partnerships with just folks that I mentioned before, and even FDOT was very instrumental in just getting some resources to us for the program. There's some other opportunities that we would like to continue to pursue, such as the pop-up city component. So I mentioned before about our one workshop in Waimama. It was a 3-hour workshop, and we were able to go and kind of do Flip Junior on the road, and it was a really cool experience with them too. They got to analyze, question and critique the things that are going on in their community and how they can make it better, and they made some pop-up cities. It would be great for us to continue the beautification projects in these underserved communities, as well as doing walking tours in these communities. And we would love to, and we're going to, add pre and post surveys so we can measure the outcomes more quantitatively, as well as do some service announcements. And you will actually have an opportunity to see the mural that the kids worked on up close. So there is going to be an event thrown by the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association called the Tampa Heights Harvest Market. You may have in front of you a flyer. The details are a little different now, so it's not going to be November 20th. It's November 21st from 11 to 3. We'll be out there along with some vendors. There's going to be a horse-drawn hay ride. There's going to be a pumpkin patch, and of course, our mural with an art exhibit that just embodies the whole Flip Junior experience. And that's all I have for you today. Again, I thank you for the opportunity to share this wonderful program.
Davida, thank you so much. This is Rick Fernandez. As a resident of Tampa Heights, I can tell you how much I know. Well, I can't say I've spoken with Lena Young-Green about this particular project, but I can just imagine that she's just over the moon about it. And certainly your enthusiasm is infectious. It's great. It's great to hear this. Probably one of the most hopeful presentations I've heard at this committee. certainly today. Maybe you're creating some more Josh Franks out there for the future. That's great. Josh, I'm only picking on you because I see your lovely face sitting there on my screen. Any questions or comments for Davida? Josh Frank, go ahead.
Well, that's why I'm on here. I think this is fantastic. I just wanted to throw two names out there because the AIA, for example, has a similar program where they work with students, elementary school students, middle school students, to talk about architecture and the built environment. So there's a natural overlap there. I'd encourage you to reach out. Maybe there's some potential partnerships that can be done there. And then I was glad to see the MERP program at USF. I think that's a fantastic partner. I was going to recommend that, but I would also suggest reaching out to the School of Architecture and Community Design, which is a sister program with MERP. They have a little bit more resources as a school, and the Florida Center for Community Design and Research, which I am a proud alumni of, does fantastic work in the community, and there's great overlap between them and the AIA. So I think that would be a natural connection for you to make, and to only make this program even better than it already is, which it's very, very excellent. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. Any other comments or questions for Davida? All right, seeing none. Davida, again, thank you so much. Keep up the good work. And if there's anything I personally can do to help, let me know. Frankly, I wasn't aware of the funding opportunity or the need. I'd be happy to contribute to this in some way. Maybe you just need to get the word out a little more, because somehow I missed that memo. All right, thank you. You have a good day. Okay, at 11:50, and we're right on, in fact, a minute ahead of schedule, so we're doing well. We've moved on to unfinished business and new business. First item, data request and status update. That sounds like a Rich issue, is it?
Well, it's actually a Johnny issue, but Johnny is off for the next 6 weeks. He's about to be a new father again, or maybe he already is a new father again at this point. I'm not sure, but I am pinch hitting for him for this meeting and your next meeting in December, which, by the way, is December 15th. It's a joint meeting with the Technical Advisory Committee. But back to the data requests and status update. Johnny did leave me with some notes about various things that the committee has requested that we're trying to get a handle on and may have already provided. But for example, a question came up a couple of meetings ago about some of the street lights and why they're turning purple. There is information in your packet as part of the addendum, a news story that was reprinted there. Essentially, it's defective lighting elements and filters, and TICO is making an effort to replace those as they're brought to their attention or as they spot them. But there's a link there that you can go report those if that's a concern. Another request that was made had to do with who's in charge of what road. And I believe that information has been provided. I think Joshua asked for that. And we do have a map that shows who's responsible for maintaining what roads, at least within the city of Tampa. And it's not always a simple answer. I'll just say that. And then the last thing that was requested, I think this might have been from Christine Acosta, had to do with the public transportation safety targets. And her question was, is there a relationship between accidents involving transit and the speed of the vehicles? That is not an easy question to track down an answer to or even get data on. That may be something that we'd have to dig into as a special project. It's not something that HART is compiling on a consistent or systematic basis. So we're going to continue to try to dig into that, but it may require more effort than perhaps was originally anticipated. So that's basically what I wanted to say under the data requests. And we'll try to keep track of these and report back to you as we get more information.
Okay, Rich, thank you. That brings us to the end of the agenda. I just have a quick comment to make regarding attendance at the meetings. Nikki, go ahead. Can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
I am committing to being at the next meeting in person so that we can get this quorum thing under control. So I will be at the joint meeting, so you can put me down as in person. I cleared my schedule just to make sure we can not be in this position any further. And just a follow-up question for Rich. I just got your voicemail, by the way, and I apologize. It's been chaotic here catching up after being out sick. With the lights for Tico, are they actively going to be searching these out because they're everywhere, or do we really have to go through, and do I need to go to every single pole in my neighborhood and report the numbers on these poles? Like, are they kind of putting the onus on the neighborhood to do this? So I guess that's my curiosity on what it seemed to be their reaction was to this, because I could spend a whole day just writing down numbers and reporting polls.
Yeah, I honestly don't know the answer to that question, Nikki. I suspect it's a little of both. I think the news article that was quoted sort of indicated that the TICO's aware of the problem, and I'm sure their crews are making an effort to replace those defective lighting lights when they spot them or when they're out on the road. But I think they're also trying to enlist the public to bring those to our attention as as they're detected. So what it says is that if you know of one, you can get in touch with them, write down the intersection closest to the light or the 10-digit number found on the pole. So it sounds like it's something they're asking public help
actually
with.
write down the ones that aren't purple currently.
I didn't get the question.
I said it would be easier for me to write down for an entire district which ones are not purple. I'm
Yeah,
not even, you know what I mean?
think,
Like,
not to take up too much time on this, but I think, if you have a concern or a question, I think you probably need to get in touch with TICO.
And just so you know, I've reported one, and they were able to come and fix it within like 24 hours. So they're pretty responsive.
I guess I'll just walk around and report poll after poll. All of Nebraska, all of Kennedy, all of Henderson, all of them. So, all right, well, that's good enough. At least they're going to attempt to replace them, hopefully not with the same lights. So.
All right, let's move on from that, if we might, and I'll bring this in for a landing on time, if not a little earlier. Rich, this really spins off of something Nikki said, the TAC-CAC meeting. Historically, as I recall, we haven't had any action items for that meeting that would require a quorum. Is that the case, or are you guys planning on putting something on the agenda that will actually require votes?
There may be something that requires a vote.
Okay, well, in that case, certainly, Nikki, it'd be great. I know I've held myself in reserve the last few meetings to fill a quorum if necessary, but up until the last couple of weeks or a couple of months, we haven't had the need for that. I was prepared to show up in person today, but that wouldn't have made a difference again. So I just remind everybody, I don't even know who's still on this call, but especially the new folks, if we don't have a quorum in person now, given the state of the executive order from the governor, if we don't have a quorum present in the room, and I think that means 7 right now, we really can't take any action on anything officially under our bylaws. So if there are some issues that need to be resolved, I don't need to air them here, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if there's some issues that need to be resolved that can fix this, please bring it up. You can bring it up directly with me or with Bill or with staff and see if we can fix whatever it is. I've been on this committee now for almost 4 years, I think, and up until the last couple of months, we've never had a problem with filling quorum. So I'm not sure what the what the change is. But we need to get back on track and hopefully start next year back where we've been. That's it. That's all I have. Unless there's something for the good of the order, I'm ready to adjourn the meeting. Anything? Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. See you next month.
Before
Thank you.
I know we're adjourned, but I was going to say.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, there's some hands. I apologize. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know we're adjourned, but just a side note, perhaps sending out not the Survey Monkey, but something to everybody on the board that as of January, we get back to action of being in person and get some commitments in advance so that people can clear their schedule going into a new year. Because I think that what's happened is with everything being virtual, there's that assumption. So I would be willing to start to commit to in-person meetings. It's just getting that calendar ready for the 2022. So that would maybe be a good idea.
Okay, good suggestion. Hoyt, did I see your hand?
You did, but I was waving goodbye because I thought we were done, so I don't need anything.
All right, goodbye. Thank you all very much. See you next month.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Rich.